have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host, Coale, and with me, as always, I have my good friend and co-host, Aaron. Aaron, Merry Christmas! Oh, man! That was beautifully in sync!
I knew you were going to do that.
I want to know how!
Yeah, I read your brain hole.
Yes, absolutely. My brain hole was there,
It was
so...
exposed.
Yes. Super exposure there. But yeah, so pretty much this is our Christmas episode we're releasing this year, and what better way to celebrate that than to talk about a horror Christmas movie concerning a certain Christmas icon, Krampus.
Krampus.
So yeah, Aaron, have you ever had any prior exposure to the idea of Krampus or anything like that?
I know a little bit about Krampus, just like mythological Krampus. Like he's a dude with horns and hooves. He's like a demon kind of guy, and he like follows around Santa Claus and like beats children that are naughty or something like that.
Yeah, you're pretty much on the money there.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much right there on the money. But yeah, Krampus was one of those things. I don't know about you, but growing up, I had heard like vague things about it. It's like, oh yeah, did you know there's actually this dark figure called Krampus, which is basically somebody that would snatch children and beat them with a stick.
Yeah.
There, which again, from what I understand of the actual mythology of Krampus, it was kind of like a thing to encourage kids more of being good. Because, you know, again, if the idea of presents, of being good, wasn't enticing enough, perhaps the idea of not doing anything bad to avoid punishment there. I think it's just kind of the standard thing, kind of like, you know, how parents would say, like, monsters would get the children if they wandered out late at night.
Yeah.
Just one of those stories there. But a lot of people, again, and this is a big thing I have to staple down. Krampus is not Satan, unlike what everybody says he is, because that's like a popular...
Satan-y. Yeah, I can see it.
Yes.
He looks a little demonic.
Yes, absolutely. And so I watched a whole interesting video about Krampus, which I won't get heavily into, but I do encourage those curious about Krampus to definitely watch some like essay videos on YouTube or something to talk about it, because it's really interesting, because it's one of the few pagan icons that the church was okay with, because whenever it came to, again, them wanting to celebrate the birth of Christ during that time, they had issues because, again, of like pagan rituals and everything. Right. But the idea of Krampus is like, oh, you better be good, otherwise Krampus will come get you. And like, what's the church all about? Forgiving you of your sins.
Yeah, and also being good so you don't go to hell.
Yes, exactly. So it kind of went hand in hand together, and so they're just like...
Christmas stuff is pagan anyways. Christmas trees are a pagan ritual. I mean, Yuletide is literally... pagan shit about evergreens. It's like a fertility ritual. Christ wasn't even born on Christmas. He wasn't born on December 25th. No. They were just like, well, there's all kinds of people celebrating this holiday anyway, so let's make it the Jesus birthday, because we don't actually know when he was born.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, they just have to coincidentally place it on the exact day they celebrated just to kind of snuff out the religion, because that's how evangelists work. It's just spreading it and basically seizing and conquering. But that's beside the point. But there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff about it, which is why I'm surprised we don't see too many Krampus style projects there. And so whenever I had heard about this film being released in theaters, I didn't really rush out to watch it, because again, I was like, okay, it's just going to be the typical, like, they're going to make Krampus this demon or whatever, and just not really put any thought into it. And so I didn't really necessarily avoid it, but I didn't run out to watch it there. I don't know if you had ever heard about this movie.
I've heard about the movie. It's one of those things that, like, I think I was alive when it came out, and then, subsequent Christmases, seasons, sometimes you kind of hear a reference to it, but No, I have never like seen any clips from it or anything even.
Yep, and it's hard to believe that it came out in 2015, so it's already 7 years old already, so it's crazy to think about, but it wasn't until last year whenever I watched it, and again, like I mentioned in the previous episode, whenever you had guessed a year ago that we're going to watch Krampus, I was like, man, why didn't we choose Krampus there? That's a terrific idea.
Seasonal.
So, yes, I wanted to make up for, I wouldn't say mistake, but missed opportunity and make up for it now. So, everybody grab on to your glass of eggnog, your hot cocoa, whatever beverage you're enjoying. Maybe, probably, I don't know. I'm not there.
Maybe.
Ooh.
A cold beer.
Dude, man, Aaron's your drink man. You know what I mean?
4 glasses of whiskey.
Yes.
Everything else that you drink on the holiday season.
Absolutely. Grab your beverage, hold on tight, as we watch Krampus tonight.
Ho, ho, ho. Krampus to go.
And we are back from watching Krampus.
Krampus!
Yes, Krampus. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this film, because this was a film where there was a lot of commentary I wasn't expecting. But yes, I am very curious and eager to dive into this. So, Aaron, please give initial thoughts.
Man, this film was a real cramp in my ass. You know what I'm saying?
I had a feeling, had a little bit of an inkling of a feeling there.
It was pretty goofy, you know. It was pretty self-aware of its goofiness, I feel like, but it's definitely like a B movie, maybe a C movie, you know.
Well, I'll definitely be curious to dive into the nitty-gritty of it. I will give a slight overview for people who maybe have heard of Krampus or don't know anything about Krampus. I might as well jump into the storyline before diving into thoughts. So, Krampus is a film that comes from Michael Dougherty, which you actually probably don't know this, but he directed the Godzilla vs. Kong movie as well as Trick or Treat.
Okay, I did pick up that because, I mean, they had like a little Trick or Treat references in there, and the style definitely seems similar. Spoiler alert, not as good as Trick or Treat in my opinion, but
without spoiling too much, I agree. I wholeheartly agree, and I'll kind of dive into it. But getting into the nitty-gritty of the plot, so this film from Michael Dougherty, it's basically a film where a little boy is pretty much very passionate about Christmas. Like, he doesn't believe in Santa Claus, but he believes in the spirit of it, to the point where he's willing to get into fights with people that kind of, you know, those people that just have to, like, ruin Christmas.
Yeah, this guy's like probably like 12 or something, you know, like at that age where he's, you know, shouldn't really be believing in Santa, but so his peers aren't, but he's still kind of holding on. And you would probably remember being that age where kids are like, oh, did you know Santa's not real owned? You know?
Yes. And so he's dealing with this, and it's gets harder for him to stay in the Christmas spirit whenever his family and extended family is invited over. And it, you know, it's usual with Christmas stresses that families typically aren't known to get well along together, and this is just another example of that. And whenever he starts and pretty much loses that faith in the spirit of Christmas, they get a little visit from Krampus and the gang.
And the gang, that's important. Yeah, he's got a bunch of little buddies.
Yes, and so that's pretty much about the plot of the film, and I feel like plot-wise, I feel like it's completely understandable. I feel like they have to set in motion on why Krampus would be visiting this, which, in all honesty, I kind of like that they took the time in the plot to set up a reason as to why Krampus would arrive, as opposed to just have him be like, oh, I'm here to mess things up.
Right.
You know, I really do like that idea. And plot-wise, I feel like it does a lot of stuff fairly well. I think the execution is where it's hit or miss.
Yeah, pretty poorly executed. I do think the plot's a little simple. I think the setup's good. But then, yeah, the movie is kind of just in the house with Krampus.
Yeah. I feel like if you were to look at the bullet points are pretty standard and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense. It's just the direction that they take to get to those bullet points to weave it together. That's whenever I feel like it definitely kind of misses the mark a little bit.
I'd agree. And yeah, I feel like somebody probably had those bullet points on paper and be like, this would be a great movie, and then they hand it off to somebody to write a script. And that's where it started going south. Because the in between the bullet points, like the structure itself is fine. It's it's a lot of the little the details, the little parts in between where it starts to waver for me.
I would definitely agree. And so, like, I'm sure there's probably, like, some stuff we'll talk about later on stuff that maybe we would have done differently, fine-tuned, stuff like that. But as is, like, I think we can at least both agree that the plot is just fairly grounded, and I think it's good that they tried to keep it a little more simplistic there, because otherwise, with the direction they took to kind of weave it together, would have definitely been even more messy.
Right, and especially with the sort of like tone and feeling, it's not taking itself that seriously as a movie. If you try to get too convoluted with it, it might be not in service to that idea. But
I feel like, because that's an interesting thing I think we could definitely talk about, is the overall tone of the film. I feel like it was a good idea to make it kind of more of a comedy than just pure horror. However, it's like one of those things where you take Evil Dead 2, and that was an even mixture of both. Like, it had the pure horror and the absurdism that comes with comedy, and it was very much back and forth there.
Right.
Whereas this one, I feel like the comedy hits a little bit too much to where it just kind of gets ludicrous. A little bit. It's not the fact that comedy's bad, because there is some good comedic moments. It's just they do a little bit too much.
And I would say this is kind of where I kind of get the vibe of this is almost like somebody tried to take like Christmas Vacation and make it a horror movie. But they did a really bad job,
I feel like Christmas Vacation is more of a horror movie.
Honestly, that's a more scary situation. But it has, the in-laws that are wily and row, and then they come in and they're cracking silly one-liners, and there's a lot of slapstick comedy, it's like that. But it's like, well, what if also people were dying,
Yeah, and that's honestly another point I want to dive into is the characters, because I feel like this time round, the characters, again, I feel like it's important to kind of break down some of them. For instance, we talk about the little boy whose name is Max, played by MJ Anthony, and I feel like overall he does a fine job. Yeah, nothing like alarming or anything like that, and he kind of ends up being the main character sort of for the most part there, because it focuses on him a lot, then it disperses evenly to the rest of the family, which I definitely think is good. But the characters themselves, it's like you get an idea of who he is. He kind of is the catalyst to get the plot going.
Right.
And then I just kind of feel like he does sink into the background a little bit more.
Yeah, it's an interesting...
And only pops up later.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice, because I think when the movie starts, like, he's the point of view character, more or less. Like, you're kind of following Max around and what Max is doing and what Max is thinking. And then, whenever the blizzard comes and here cometh Krampus, you really are hardly ever around Max or what Max is doing or what Max is thinking, which is odd given, some of the reasons why Krampus is there in the first place. But
yeah. And talking about these next few characters, I feel like a lot of them, are the most part, are kind of, again, we're used to it with films we watch, and I keep mentioning this time and again, but they're almost like characters as opposed to characters.
It's like they're here to service the plot, but the plot's pretty straightforward, so they're just kind of cardboard characters. But
yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about this one fantastic actor,
Adam
Scott, who plays Tom, who's the dad of Max. And again, you're going to hear about the same thoughts that I have, but him specifically also, I feel like at the beginning, he's way too apathetic, like unbelievably apathetic before he starts to get humanized whenever they focus it. Yeah. It's like the plot requires the majority of the characters to be as apathetic as possible in order to push Max to the edge.
Sure.
And it's just because I remember specifically watching it the first time. I didn't like a majority of the characters because I'm like, they're just terrible.
Yeah.
They're just terrible people, and it isn't until later in the plot whenever like, oh no, they're human, they have their own thoughts and beliefs, but by that point they had already lost me, so it took me a while before I'm wheeled back in. You could
definitely do that with like a character or two or three, you know, in a movie where it's like, okay, here's the people you like, and we don't like these people, but then hey, they redeem themselves. But like when the entire cast is like that, it's like, ooh, you know.
Yeah, because I imagine it was the same thing for you, where you felt like you didn't really like the characters because they did a little bit too much to make them unlikable.
Yeah, they were a little too like rambunctious, especially the in-laws were all just like serving to be caricatures of bad family members to the point where they're just like, oops, I shot your wife. And, that didn't actually happen, but you know, it's just egregious to that degree where you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I will say this, watching it the second time round, because I was prepared for this, I actually didn't find them quite as horrendous. I guess that's a word I can go for. I didn't find them horrendous, and I picked up some of the nuances, but again, first time viewing, I was on the same boat as you, where I was just like, I just don't care about this.
Adam Scott plays Tom, the husband, and he works a lot. That's his character. He works a lot, and he's kind of a wimp. He was an Eagle Scout, was his character, and he's played by Adam Scott. So if you don't know who Adam Scott is, just Google him, kind of look at his face, and you go, oh yeah, that guy. He plays the same guy in every movie, and fuck Adam Scott. Right?
There it is. I was just like waiting, like, he's gonna do it.
I'm on my Adam Scott rant right now, okay? I didn't bother to learn his name even until this movie, but I've seen many movies with him, and he's always just like, I kind of look like an asshole. I've got this face where I'm kind of an asshole. And, you know, I just play the same character in every movie. And I think that's just Adam Scott. So if I ever meet Adam Scott at a party, I'm going to piss on his shoes. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, I was waiting for it. It's like, he's going to do it. He's going to do it.
And just like, if he was a great actor, if he was great at doing that part, that'd be awesome. But then, like, he had to do something else in this movie, you know, a time or two. He had to be like, you know, I gotta protect my flock, you know, and it's just like the worst delivery of the line I've ever heard in my life. It's just really, they like tried to humanize him, and it was like, it's still Adam Scott, guys. I'm falling for this one. You can't do anything to make me like him.
Okay.
Anyway, he's married to Sarah, the character Sarah.
Yeah. I will add this little bow asterisk on top of this present you have given me. Sure. I appreciate it, but I agree with Aaron, but it's a very much more milder version. It's not like a specific hate, but I am just like, he's just the same dude over and over again. So but I agree with Aaron totally. It's just, he's more like Jack Daniels. I'm like a Bud Light on that. We're both alcohol, just different potencies.
No, I'm like an Everclear on Adam Scott. Fuck that guy. I'm going to dig through his Twitter to find something mean he said in like 2008. Cancel that guy.
Oh my god. So good. I'm going to end on that. No, I'm not even going to top that. Toni Collette plays Sarah, who is the wife and mom of the family there. And I feel like she does a fairly good job of sort of being like on the level of being neurotic there, but it's like, again, we talk about Christmas Vacation, you mentioned it. It reminds me of Clark's wife there, except I feel like this is like the Great Value version there, but she still does a fine job.
I agree
there, but
she and her sister, which I'm sure we'll mention shortly, are both probably the strongest actresses in this movie. Strongest actors.
Absolute 100% agree. Because again, you do see kind of her grievances with some of the stuff. Because again, it's like, you know, they have the family dinner. She works really hard to like prepare and cook, and you know, there's family that does that. They're just like, oh, what is this there? Again, it's like people that don't usually have food like that, so you can understand her grievances. But again, she is also very apathetic once again to Max, which again, kind of, I wish they wouldn't have done that. I understand why they did it though, but again, they spend that time doing that, and then they have to focus on time later on,
right?
Just earning you back. And I will say those moments you mentioned with like her and her sister, as we'll talk about later, those were some of the most genuine parts of the film. I felt like where they would talk about past Christmases, because again, I think Michael Dougherty, like, whether the strength, well, we've already mentioned it, the strength of this film is nowhere near the level of Trick or Treat, but again, he's really good at analyzing a holiday and breaking it down and focusing on stuff too. So with that, I absolutely applaud him for just being able to notice stuff like that, because those moments, even though they are like moments that's like, oh, it's slower parts of the film, it's intriguing, it's interesting, they have interesting stuff to say on both sides there. So I do find it very enjoyable and interesting to watch, and I feel like Toni Collette, again, not given a lot, definitely does a lot more than Adam Scott, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I feel like both her and Adam Scott, who plays Tom, are given moments where they're like supposed to care about Max, you know what I mean? Where they're like, oh yes, I love you, by the way. And he's but it doesn't. I feel like the movie was trying to create this atmosphere of like, oh man, Max just wishes Christmas was like it used to be, where everyone was together and it wasn't awful and they all loved each other, but like the love's just not there anymore for the parents, but they still love the kid, you know. I feel like it was trying to do that kind of thing. But yeah, like both fucking Adam Scott and the Sarah were both just like felt like they didn't care about the kid until like he was bullied at the dinner table, and then they're like, oh right, we have to love our kid, let me go do this.
Well, even then, like, okay, that scene in particular, they went way too far, just be like, oh, knock it off, they're just teasing you. You know, like, they just wait until it's way too late there to try to do anything. But again, like, I will say, I'm glad they didn't do the Home Alone effect, where it's like, look what you did, you little jerk. You know, because that's one of my, like, I like Home Alone a lot. That's one of the most annoying parts of the film, is how unlikable the whole family is there. And it's like they make Macaulay Culkin a little bit too sympathetic. But that's beside the point. But I feel like I'm glad they didn't do that effect, because they could have done that. But again, it's just like way too late. And it just seemed kind of out of character. Like, oh, they suddenly care. Like their son, who basically got into a huge fight at the department store. There, which is that's another thing we'll talk about, but I don't want to derail the conversation, is just the opening scene and how it opens, and how I think it's very well done. And this next character I think will be very quick. Beth, played by Stefania Lavie Owen. She's not given anything besides being older sister role. And again, this is no dig on the actress. I feel like she does her job. I just felt like writing wise, they gave her little to no character development there. But
she is eye-rolling teenage girl number 4003.
Yes. And I just feel like, again, just serves as a plot device more than anything. And it's not even like one of those like over the top enjoyable, like, oh man, this character is wacky sort of thing. It's just very,
And I'll get on another really short social soapbox real quick.
Ooh, please, get on that soapbox. Here, let me just dust it off there.
Teen girls as side characters are pretty just fucking underdeveloped by how I feel like it's just full of men directors that are like, yeah, teen girls be shopping and on the iPhones or whatever, and that's the whole character, like, every time for every single one of these fucking movies. You know, girls have personalities. You ever thought about that? It's probably why I didn't get laid in high school. Fucking director, man. Owned. Anyway, next one.
The only thing I will give, like, kudos. I will give a kudos bar to Beth here, is whenever they're at the dinner table, you know, she does try to stop her brother there, but you also feel like she's mostly just trying to do it because she's like, I just want to get through this dinner there. And I do like the moment whenever they do reveal the letter and what it says and her reaction to it. I thought that was good, but that's like a sprinkle just on top of
a little mist.
A little mist. Like, the little do there, but
if you really dig in, you can appreciate that.
No diss on the actor, more so just on the way she was written.
It's just her role. She did a great job.
Speaking of roles, this is probably, I'm predicting this character was the one central character that you had an issue with, because that was every time audible commentary came from Aaron was focusing on grand old Omi, played by Krista Stadler.
That's another one where it was entirely the writing fault and not necessarily the actress. I'm sure she's a great actress. Maybe she didn't appear great in this role. But I mean, she did her job. But geez, it just threw me off every time that she would be speaking in German most of the time. But she obviously understands English, and nobody would speak in German back to her, and they'd have full conversations back and forth where she was speaking in German and they were speaking in English. And it's like, it got to the point where it's ridiculous, where like she's like, even Max didn't understand her at some point, and he asked her a question in English and she responded in German, and they were like, "Oh, what did she say?" And he was like, "Oh, I don't." It's like she's a talking dog in a movie. Where, like, the dog just barks, and they're like, "What's that, boy?" I'm going to translate out loud every sentence so that the audience can hear. It got absurd. Like, I feel like they started this movie, and they were like, "All right, Max and fucking Adams, you have to pretend you know German. Can you handle that as actors?" And Max was like, "No, I'm a child." And Adam was like, "No, I'm not good at acting." So they were like, "Well, I guess you'll just speak in English, and she'll speak in German because she has to be German for the story." Anyway.
Yeah, just to show, like, the German heritage, which it's difficult because I understand why she's German, because she has, like, a whole build-up that kind of relates heavily, and not to mention the fact that, you know, Christmas, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of a Germanic holiday, correct?
Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well,
that's where a lot of the pagans were. It would make sense.
Yeah, that's what I think anyways. And so I feel like the idea of the character is good for the story. I felt like it's good. It's just the execution was very sloppy. And I think they even make commentary about how inconsistent whether she's going to speak in English or German is. Yeah. Which, again, it just... I don't know. I just wish it could have been handled better. Yeah. Like, I understand that it was maybe the idea of, like, yeah, the actress can't speak German, but we want her to speak German because it sounds cool there. But I just wish that, I mean, Adam probably can't do it, but the little child can. The little child's more capable.
Maybe. I just, yeah. It also struck me as odd that, like, in the beginning, they established that she's, like, German grandma and she speaks in German, and they translate everything she says on the screen in subtitles, you know what I mean? And then later, they just drop the subtitles, and then people just start translating for her. It's just inconsistent throughout the movie.
Yeah, it was definitely inconsistent, and so, definitely wish her character would have been more defined and sanded out, you know. I felt like it was definitely a rough character idea, definitely good for the plot, just not the best device I've seen. Like, it wasn't well polished. So again, and no diss on the actress does a really good job, I think, there, you know. I mean, I would say the best job, but good. Good. And she has, like, a few moments where it's just like, yeah, that's well done, like, you know, especially towards the end of the film.
Yeah.
Although, oh, man. Okay. Character decisions, questionable.
Oh, absolutely.
But
100%.
That's kind of the territory, unfortunately, with horror films. It's just very poor decision-making.
Yeah. But even before anything goes wrong, poor decision-making.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to go ahead and skip over to this character because I'm going to save this grand peach right here towards the end here. So we'll talk about the other sister, Linda, played by Allison Tolman. And this, I feel like I'm biased because she was in Fargo season 1 and she was like one of my favorite characters. Oh, you saw it? Yeah, she was Molly Solverson.
Yeah, I didn't finish that season. I didn't finish Fargo because I'm terrible at watching television. But I liked it. Yeah, she was great.
No, she was one of my favorite characters, and she's a fantastic actress there. And I feel like while everybody's apathetic and mean, I feel like she was really the only closest one of being sort of nice. Again, she was like a bit... I don't know.
She's like a bit of a mess.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since her husband kind of just piles responsibility on her there a lot of the time. But I feel like as an actress, I think she's phenomenal. But again, this could be my own bias there. But I thought she did a terrific job. And again, whenever it came to those emotional moments and scenes between her and Toni Collette, I thought they were well done. Character-wise, again, I feel like she's just kind of the one that's kind of the again, she's the younger sister and kind of folds in typically.
Mm-hmm.
There's usually more introverted there a lot of the time, and just kind of, again, she has to be the manager of her family there. But I feel like she does a good job. I feel like she gets a couple of moments to shine. But yeah, I mean, I got nothing else besides the character. But again, that's also kind of the bad thing is like she's given a little bit, but not a lot, like defining character. It's not like I'll go down and be like, oh, this is one of the best characters in cinema. But
no, but she's given a job and she kind of goes beyond the expectations.
Absolutely,
I feel like,
112% agree. And then we'll get to David Koechner, who plays Howard. Which Aaron and I had this discussion while watching the film about how we only know him really from Anchorman and other bits of media, but we don't know what character he was or anything. It's just he was an Anchorman.
This guy, and he probably always named Howard too. If I had to guess, he's like a real Howie kind of guy.
Yeah, and so he's the husband. And again, with this side of the family, it's very much the cousin Eddie sort of type of family.
Yeah.
They're redneck. That's the sort of vibes I got there. Again, they're just very kind of messy country bumpkins sort of thing. And from what I've seen on like cameo videos David's done, he's just the same dude.
Yeah.
But again, it's just, I don't know, even though he kind of plays the same character as opposed to Adam Scott, I feel like I just, again, enjoy him.
Yeah, he's got like this caricature thing that he's been doing for at least a decade now.
Yeah.
Probably a couple, 3 decades.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a funny caricature. I feel like the script turned it up a little too much for this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little over the top, but it kind of dials down as the movie goes on, and he's enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will say, to the script's credit, I feel like they had fun writing for this character and another character we'll talk about. I feel like those two were the favorites, because again, my favorite line that, I mean, a lot of the times the stuff he says, I mean, we're pretty much from the Bible Belt here, so we're used to this sort of talk. We've heard it from loads of relatives there, but it's like, talking about bringing guns, he's like, shepherd's got to protect his flock.
Yeah.
Doing that, it just sounds way too country. It's just so good. And so, again, most believable, grounded character, groundbreaking, no, but for the story, I feel like it services just fine. It's kind of like, he's that guy you bring in case you need like an energetic country sort of fella.
Yeah, a rural kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. And so, moving down the line, these characters are pretty much going to be like moving down the line, but the sisters, I feel like they're fine, but they're super antagonistic out of left field. I feels like, which again, I've had cousins that have been bullies to me, like whenever I was younger and everything. So it's not the fact I don't believe it, but it just is so overly antagonistic. And whenever you have a whole bunch of people being apathetic there, because even Howard, that David plays, he's also apathetic. He's like, oh yeah, you're nothing but a wimp. Where is this fancy smashy food? I should have brought a bird.
Right, yeah, it's, it is over the top. It's like, creme brulee. I only eat mac and cheese and hot dogs.
And so I feel like just with a mix of the just lack of sympathy and these two, it just, the first time I watched it, it was kind of annoying to watch there, because I felt like they're just going as hard as they can to push Max over the edge to basically starting to lose that Christmas spirit and everything. So
it's also like audiences aren't that dumb, so like we can get when people are being mean without literally having like a bullying scene at the Christmas dinner table. Like it's like, oh, you can be a little more realistic with it. We'll understand, but they kind of ham-fist everything in the beginning to be like, these people are country, this lady's rude, these kids are bullies. You get it? Do you get it?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And again, I don't feel like it's the actress's fault at all. And I do find it an interesting character choice that even though they are girls, they are dressed up more like boys. And again, they do make a comment about it later, and I'm like, well, that's kind of clever, but I feel like these characters were kind of screwed in the writing department there, because again, they go from like being bullies to being kind of way too apathetic later on there. So minor nitpick there. It doesn't like bother me too much like watching a second time around, but it was definitely like so that's going through. Howie Jr., Mountain Dew Pringle eating boy. It's every silent cousin that is quiet and is awkward and eats nothing but food.
No, that's Howie Jr., right?
Yeah.
No,
No,
Stevie was one of the girl, right? Or wait.
Holy crap, I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
Yes.
Howie Jr.
Howie Jr., yes.
Yeah, he's the Mountain Dew Dorito kid that doesn't talk.
Stevie and Jordan were the sisters.
Yeah.
So retcon that. I'm not gonna edit it. Howie Jr. is the one that's like silent, eating food, and again, I just feel like he's a body. Like that's the whole purpose there.
He's Augustus Gloop.
Yes, absolute. Yeah, Augustus Gloop, Bumpkin. So, but I feel like again, actor does fine. I'm sure he just did exactly what the script called for.
Yeah.
And so nothing there. And then finally we will jump to Aunt Dorothy, played by Conchata Ferrell, and her character is divisive because I feel like she's playing that stereotypical aunt you see.
You've probably seen this actress before. She kind of plays the same character every movie, but sometimes she plays a better version of that character, and this is like the worst version of that character.
I do feel like she has a couple of good lines.
Yeah.
I feel like, but again, I do feel like it's just her going off whatever the script calls for there.
Yeah, she's delivering the lines that are given to her, but the lines are just so stupid.
Yeah, I feel like she's just one of those, again, we see this a lot. There's a lot of characters that are typecast in the same roles over and over again, but I will say this, I pretty much prefer her stereotype over the Adam Scott stereotype.
Fair.
Yeah, fair. You know, but there is a couple of like good lines I laughed at, and again, it's not the fact that I like it because it's clever. It's just well delivered.
Yeah, I would say the ones that I laughed at, I will still give them props for, even though I was laughing mostly because it was stupid. You know what I mean? But I feel like at the same time, a lot of those lines were supposed to be just kind of fucking stupid.
Yeah,
so,
just kind of silly one-liners there. But I feel like overall, she does the job she needs to. She fills the role that she does need to. And again, just kind of is the sort of cousin Eddie that we're used to at a lot of
but just like super judgmental too. Just half of her lines, at least in the beginning of the movie, are just like, you call this a turkey? This is more like my dick hole, or whatever. and then
it clogs my pipes.
Yeah. And Sarah's just trying to be like, okay, well, I put all this work into it. And she's like, well, this place looks like Martha Stewart shit Snoop Dogg all over it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah. So Aaron's more on the side of like not a fan. I'm on the side of I enjoyed her there. So that's where the lines are.
Me, I just like I feel like I would have enjoyed all the antics and goofiness if it was just like, I feel like I just tried a little too hard, you know what I mean?
I agree, and that's kind of like what I talked about with like the comedy. I feel like the comedy is a little too out there, and it doesn't blend in well with the film. Like it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb a little bit. It's not even
really that the jokes aren't that funny, or that like, you know, it's like they did like 50 takes of all these, and they just picked the most ridiculous one for each one, and it's like, because they were just tired in the editing room, and that was the one that was like, oh yeah, this is the funny one because I've heard all these 15 times, and that was the one that they did the loudest, so that must be the funny one. But it's like, no, there's probably a funnier cut of this movie you could make where they delivered the lines a little different.
Yeah.
But,
No, I would definitely agree. And one thing before we dive into the other aspects of the film, we might as well talk about the titular character itself, Krampus. Now, with Krampus, again, I know you kind of went in with like little to no, like you knew a little bit about Krampus, but not a lot. But that being said, what did you think about Michael's interpretation of Krampus?
Can I like describe Krampus? Because you don't really see all of them until later in the movie, but... I guess it's fine. I was expecting him to be like the goat version, you know, the full like goat face and Beelzebub looking demon kind of Krampus. but he was like a mix of like that and like Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just like with the comedy, I feel like a lot of the horror elements of this movie, they were kind of trying too hard, and it just didn't. It had the opposite effect for me.
Yes. Yeah, I would totally agree with that, because I feel like whenever I watched it the first time, I was not prepared for how over the top it was going to be there. And I feel like, again, comparing it to Evil Dead 2, because I feel like that's a good comparison between the two. I feel like Evil Dead 2 got the balance just right.
Yeah.
It was a perfect teeter-totter where they did have well-defined horror and well-defined comedy.
Right.
But I feel like Krampus, it starts to cramp a little bit, where it focuses a little too more on the comedy than horror, which isn't bad per se. I've seen it well done. It just, whenever it tries to be scary, it just feels like you're kind of like, it's not an even balance.
Right, you've been numbed enough by the comedy that it's just not
and it
scary.
tries to do a teeter-totter effect as opposed to wrapping both at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm trying to get at, because as we'll talk about later, because there's one film, it's not going to be the next film, but it's going to be soon, because I just can't wait. I'm like super excited about it. There's one film, in my wholehearted opinion, does this super duper well. Mixes more so comedy with added flavor of horror.
Yeah.
But this one was weird. It couldn't decide if it wanted to be a comedy or a horror there. But that being said, I still enjoyed a lot of the comedic bits and the horror bits. But that being said, I totally diverted off talking about Krampus itself. So I was expecting the same thing as well. I was expecting that sort of more goat-shaped monster to be Krampus, but I gotta be honest, I love the design of this Krampus here and what they did and how they encapsulated that he's more also akin to Santa and a mix of the goat thing. And I think in my opinion, looking at the film, this is where Michael had the most fun making the film, is focusing on Krampus himself, because you get a lot of build up, and personally the reveal of once you finally get to see him is very well done. Getting there, questionable. We're going to dissect that later, but the reveal itself, I was like, that's cool. Yeah,
I do dig it. I think in retrospect, having seen this design, the goat design, might have been a little bit of a cop out almost. Because this one has his own little flair on it, and I can't say that I've seen somebody try to make a spooky Santa demon like that. So I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, no, I was a huge fan of it, and I feel like because they tease like what Krampus looks like, they're good teases. I will say these teases are very solid, and I love the way that they tease it there. It's not just a simple, trying to think. It's not like the simple, like, Jason, like you just see the hands or anything. They do have sort of moments like that, but you do actually see like a silhouette or artistic interpretations of Krampus leading up to the big reveal. And it's one of the few reveals that I'm like, wow, that is a really good reveal. I really love the design of it. Yeah. And I love the nature of Krampus there, because that's one thing I do want to dive heavily into, spoilers, is talking about, I don't know what you would call it, but Krampus's sense of morality. Like, I'm very curious to see what you have to say about it later on, because that was the one thing I was very uncertain about the first time I watched it. And so this second time around watching it, I was really trying to look, because I even tried to look at like video essays after I watched it to see what other people thought about it. And theirs were inconclusive and didn't talk about bullet points I wanted to. But that being said, and we'll talk about it later because we won't spoil too much about the Krampus design, but yeah, it's not the traditional sort of goat look, but in all honesty, I think that's just where Michael has fun. I mean, you look at Sam from Trick or Treat, and that's just a solid design and feels like it encapsulates the character well. Right. It's like he has a very good artistic sense for creating these holiday centralized characters and bringing them to life. And again, while I think Sam is, again, like if I had to put them head to head, Sam is just the way more iconic and well perfected design.
Oh yeah.
I feel like Krampus is still a really good design, and it's like my favorite character to see in this film. But yeah, so talking about that, and I will lead into this because this is one thing that watching, especially the second time round with the Scream Factory 4K remaster they did, I love how much practical effects they used a lot of the time, because again, I'm a true believer that practical effects for the most part will hold up indefinitely better than digital effects there.
Yeah.
And they did use digital effects in the film, but it was for things that it's like, yeah, I understand why you used it there.
Right.
But like, you know, Krampus himself, you know, it's not some CGI monster there a lot of the time. It's like a, you know, a big costumed design there, and a lot of the effects you see, like with like people being dragged through the snow and stuff like that, I cannot applaud enough personally. I just really enjoyed seeing it, how it was all accomplished. Another thing I will say is Christmas film. How much would you say this is a Christmas film?
Oh, I mean, I feel like it's 100% designed to be Christmas film. I think they're trying to cash in on people will watch this multiple times every Christmas or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you feel Michael does capturing the idea of Christmas versus capturing the idea of Halloween in Trick or Treat?
I mean, just the way he captured Halloween to me was just so much more, you know, endearing, and you know, he had sort of the benefit of being able to tell multiple stories with that one, and being able to capture all the different little aspects of Halloween. This one, for Christmas, I feel like he does do a good job of capturing, like, the holiday spirit generally, but also at the same time, it does feel a little bit like, like a kind of a spoof or writing off the coattails of a Christmas movie, of a Hallmark Christmas type movie or whatever. Even has a lot of the same gags and, oh, the dog did something, you know, kind of stuff. So, for me, it feels less like Christmas than it does like a Christmas movie, you know what I mean?
I could see that. I could see that, because there's definitely a lot of Christmas films versus Halloween's focused films,
Right.
and I feel like Trick or Treat was just way too perfect at capturing the sensation. And as we mentioned in our previous review, different aspects of Halloween from different age groups. And so I think, again, like, it does focus on a lot of stuff of Christmas, because, again, one thing I will want to mention is the opening scene. I thought we've seen this scene a lot of times because it focuses on the manic shopping that goes on during, like, Black Friday Christmas deals. And again, this is nothing new, but I feel like the way they do it, again, kind of helps set the tone and idea and feeling of the film. And what's great is they don't make it like a big spectacle or anything. It's like something that happens while they're rolling the intro credits, which I think is well done, because they could have easily just built up the thing like, oh yeah, we got to go shopping for Christmas. But again, it just is a whole bunch of chaos that goes on in the background as they play Christmas music. Again, nothing groundbreaking or new, but the way it was executed and all the extras acted so manic. Was super well done. And here's the interesting thing. So they have the big, you know, comedic style of them trampling over each other. You know, there's even one point where one of the employees falls off the ladder backwards. It's like a big comedic thing. But one small detail that I liked a ton is they focused on the checkout process. And again, from what I've seen, a lot of the like shopping movies is, again, like the most outlandish responses from customers there. But there's like that moment where the employee is completely dead inside checking out items, and the customers as well are just dead inside as they're buying items. Again, this should be a time where you're getting joyous, buying gifts and everything. And I feel like because they explicitly took a moment to be like, no, let's just show what it's really like, you know, in some aspects, while adding a lot of the comedic, you know, just craziness of shopping. I felt like that was a really good, strong intro.
Yeah,
I think Michael Dougherty is really good at intros.
It was super, goofy and over the top, but I feel like that was the place for it. You know what I mean? Is the slow motion, knocking people out of the way. It definitely did. You're right. Set the tone for the rest of the movie. Like, this is gonna be a goofy movie about Christmas. But also people are going to die. They didn't put that part in, but
And that was also the good moment because it shows like, Max and the bully like fighting each other. And again, it's going on in the background. You know what's happening. So that way, whenever the story starts, you already have that context of like, why you got to get in fights with people.
Right.
So that's one thing I do want to applaud whenever it nails down certain aspects of Christmas. I feel like Michael does a good job. It's just not as good of a job there, but I do think whenever it comes to the motives and idea of Krampus, they don't get to focus on it quite as much, and that's the interesting thing, because again, we talked about how in Trick or Treat there's no you even said it yourself, where there's like, oh, that's Sam, he's the spirit of Halloween,
right,
sort of thing, and you really like that they were able to build up this character without saying a single thing about him, really. Whereas opposed to Krampus, they do need a little bit of exposition, but it does play more into the, you've seen this in every film, the one person who's very wary is like, oh, I warned you about good old Krampus.
I know what's going on actually this whole time, let me tell you now.
So I feel like that's actually good solid points that you've brought up previously that are applicable to now. There. Aside from that, is there any other bullet points you wanted to hit before diving into the nitty-gritty of the film?
I don't think so. I guess we can talk about, like the environment a little bit. And the music, just quickly. The music is all like old Christmassy songs, which conveniently copyright free. But
Yeah, definitely no modern songs, which again, I think it's a good idea, for longevity, because those films have been around for decades already, and they're not going away anytime soon, as opposed to modern pop hits or anything like that. I do also feel like a lot of the times the music is kind of well placed there. A bit at some moments there. It is definitely on the nose. It's like, you get it?
It is.
You get it?
Right.
But again, I feel like if you're going to play music, you might as well go that route there to add to it. But one thing I will say that we've talked about, I think the house is interesting enough. And the neighborhood surrounded by snow and everything, it's interesting enough to where, because you spend a lot of time inside the house and you don't really get bored. It just feels like a legitimate house that's been lived in. And so especially because they spend a lot of time, and there's a power outage and everything. You spend a lot of time there, and I feel like it's genuine, although there is a question of where they found so much wood.
They board up all the windows, and there's just no wood, and there's even like a little bit of a plot point of like, you can't run out of wood for the fire, and it's like, well, it's all on the windows, so
But,
I think the concept of being like trapped in a blizzard is a good horror environment, but I really feel like it didn't really make that much scarier. And also, I mean, the house was fine, but it's definitely far from like iconic. You can think of other places where you're trapped, and even Evil Dead 2. I don't think people just talk about the cabin all the time, but like at the same time, like I can still visualize the inside of the cabin, whereas this one is just like, yep, that is a middle class family home.
You know what? That's a fair point. Even though I do think the house is good, it's not as good as we've seen in any horror place. It's not Camp Crystal Lake. It's not Nancy's house from Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not Laurie's house or Michael Myers' house.
Right.
It's just okay enough.
And I feel like the how you make that into an iconic thing, how you really solidify the scene as a place, instead of just like, this is where stuff's happening, but like as an active element of the story, is like, you think of like Evil Dead 2. He runs out to the shop, and he goes from the kitchen where he's fighting the hand into here. Like they move from scene to scene, from room to room, and they're actively using parts. I mean, I can think of the whole time when he's like fighting his hand in the kitchen, and like it's that kitchen is part of the scene. It's impacting it. Whereas in this movie, with the exception of like well, the kind of around a chimney most of the time. There's not really a lot of parts where there are some. I can't like spoil them now, but for the most part, even when conflict is happening, like the location that they're in doesn't play that big of a role.
That's fair.
I guess we can dive more into details of where it does play a big role, and I'll give it props for that. Whenever we're in spoilers, but yeah, for the most part, it's like this is the house they're in, and the bad guys outside. It's not even like Home Alone where it's like, okay, he's literally using the house to like roll marbles down the stairs and shit, and it's like the house becomes part of the character. And it's. If you're not like using the scene for your benefit, they do a good job when they have to go out in the snow, and obviously the snow. There's even like a little monster in the snow at some point. Then I think that's great. That's fantastic because they're using the environment around them as part of the conflict, as part of the But for the most part, it's just kind of like day in the house.
I think you had honestly a lot of solid points there that I can't refute. I'm just glad, fortunately, it's not the most boring environment, because the environment was boring, then it would definitely hinder the film a little bit there. But yeah, so I think we've pretty much run down to the line where we're about to talk about spoilers. So how's about you give the audience your general rating and final thoughts?
Okay. Hey, well, I just like to remind everybody whenever I'm about to give a kind of stinky rating that 5 is average, right? 10 would be perfect. So this movie, also I like to remind people that it's not necessarily based off of my personal enjoyment of the movie, just like where I think the quality of a film is. So we kind of discussed a lot of the things that I don't really like about this already. We kind of got into the details. I'll be happy to go into the details of some of the things I appreciated more in spoilers, because I feel like a lot of those are pretty specific interactions. Yeah, this movie, I get that it's supposed to be goofy. I get that it's not trying to be an Oscar-winning movie. You know what I mean? But even for what it's trying to be, I feel like it kind of misses the mark a little bit. And especially seeing what this director could do before, it's a little bit of a disappointment for me. So I'm giving this film a spicy 2.5 out of 10. This is 1/4 of a perfect. You can collect the other 3/4 and get there, but yeah, again, 5 is average, so this is half of average for me. But
Wowza!
It's not a great film. I don't think anything that it does better than another film. I don't think even the depiction of Krampus is like not my favorite. It's not. It doesn't do a good job being a comedy for me, and it doesn't do a good job being a horror movie for me. So yeah, I gotta kind of rate it pretty low. But there are some shining moments that bump it up. It probably would have been like a 3, but Adam Scott's in it, so it's a 2.5. But
well, I think that might be the lowest rated film you've reviewed so far. I think.
Yeah, I was considering a 3, but I was like, no, I would rather not watch this movie over like the St. Valentine's Day movie, which is I think I gave a 3.
Yeah, My Bloody Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine, yeah.
Yes. Well,
I would probably rather rewatch that one than this one, so that's a 3. This is a 2.5.
That's fair, because at the very least, there's some like very unintentionally silly moments. In My Bloody Valentine. So,
and at least there's like it's a little more interesting, setting wise, and even some of the conflicts and plots make it a little more interesting. This was pretty straightforward, and then like if you're doing something like it's like a straight shot, I feel like you really got to nail it. And this was pretty far off the mark for me. But well.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Yes,
we've been watching too many good movies. You guys forgot that sometimes I don't like a movie. But.
No, that's perfectly fine. And again, that's my whole thing. That for the most part, I've been choosing films. I'm like, this will be a good one for a podcast. There, throw it in. So. On my side of the spectrum, I was kind of on the same boat that you not that far deep. It like without giving the number away, it's not a 2.5 or a 3 there. First time I watched it, because again, I had sort of the same anticipation I had as a thing of like, oh yeah, people really like Krampus and everything. And I go in and I watched it, and it was underwhelming because again, I'm like waiting for Krampus, and I'm just like, come on,
Give me Crampy.
come on, you son of a bitch. You know, I was waiting for the Krampus there, and again, a lot of the faults kind of hit me in the face there a bit. It was like, whoa, this, whoa, that, and watching it the first time, I was like, okay, that's fine. I do have questions, but it was fine. But you know, that was like last year, and so this year, whenever it came to watching it, I was like, yeah, let's watch it. And so because I was prepared for its faults, I kind of went in with lower expectations, kind of like I did with the thing where I'm just like, okay, you know, it's not going to be the greatest thing. Kind of go in, not with a fresh new set of eyes, but just I was ready for the dodgings, so that way the flaws didn't hit me in the face. And because of that, I was able to focus on a lot of aspects that I did enjoy. Again, some of the nuanced moments that are done well. I feel like there's a lot of times, especially with your boy Adam Scott, where they try to have those nuanced moments, and it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Definitely just deflates, kind of sucks. But whenever it came to the moments that I did like the first time round, it was just kind of like, yeah, this is good. This is good right here, and I was able to appreciate it. But when comparing it to the echelon of horror films that it is, I think, while I don't feel like to the extent of what you said, I'm like 100% agree, you hit a good note. It's not good at a horror and not good at a comedy. And while I don't feel that lowly about it, that's a fair point. Like, it doesn't blend too well together, per se. Especially because one thing I will say that is very offsetting is the stock cartoon effects they use.
Yeah.
And it comes sparingly.
Right.
So it's always a big surprise whenever they do it. And again, we'll talk about it probably more in spoilers, but it's definitely like, did they just seriously play that sound effect there? It sounds like a YouTube reviewer sound effect. But that being said, I think there's a lot to appreciate with this film still. I love the depiction of Krampus. I know Aaron's not a big fan. I'm a fan of it in just how he could have easily just done the goat thing, but again, just decides to try something new and interesting. And I really like that aspect. I love the build up to Krampus. I love the snow. I will say, Alison Tolman, I think I said her name correctly. I just enjoy seeing her in the film. And again, could pretty much is biased because I love her in Fargo, but she like Aaron said, she's pretty much the best actress, I would say. And so does a good job there. And with that in mind, I would probably rate this a good solid 6. I had considered going up to a 7 there, but again, kind of focusing on some of the flaws there. I just can't. I can't in good conscience go up that far there. So I'd rate it like a 6, so double of what you have there. I think it's a great film for nogging up with your friends. Like Aaron and I broke out some eggnog there, which I don't know if it heightened your enjoyment or worsened your enjoyment.
Oh no, that probably is what maybe give it at least a 2.5 and not just a 2.
I think, and the other thing that I do think is kind of nifty about it is I feel like this is definitely a horror entry thing. Like, you know, if there's someone who's really nervous about horror and stuff, I feel like this is a pretty good entry horror level film.
Oh yeah, it's not really and I mean, at all.
Yes. Well, yes, that's the flat moment there. There's not a lot of. Yeah, if you have like, you know, a loved one, friend that's very nervous about horror, this is not going to scare them, I don't think. So it's kind of, whether the quality, it's still a good stepping stone, I would say, into horror, of like getting used to sort of like the kind of spooks and scares that it delivers. So yeah, I give it a solid 6, very solid 6 in my opinion there. But again, like I've mentioned before, I kind of take it out of enjoyment, and in all honesty, just drinking eggnog, kicking back with the Christmas tree on, hanging out with Aaron, it it just really helps sell the Christmas spirit.
Yeah.
There, like whether it's the best Christmas film, yeah, to be determined. But it was just fun. It was fun, and it just made me really appreciate the holiday, which again, as they kind of mention in this film, kind of gets lost, especially as you get older. But yeah, so that's our reviews. Let our thoughts kind of be the determinant on whether you want to watch it or not. If you do, definitely best time to watch it is with friends during Christmas, drinking eggnog there. It's just, that I would say that's probably the best time of year to watch it if you're going to watch it anytime.
If you're going to watch it.
Yes, so let that be determinant of whether you watch it. And without further ado, let's dive into some of the nitty gritty of stuff, whether you really disliked it or actually kind of enjoyed it.
Okay. We want to just like spoil something?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Probably the scariest moment in the film is actually when you first see Krampus. You go and he's hooded and he's jumping from rooftop to rooftop.
Dude, that was so good.
Yeah. I thought it was a little corny because she just like started running in the direction he was jumping in.
Absolutely.
And she was like jumping, and he was jumping ahead of her. It's like, why is she running towards him? I don't. And then she just finds a car and like decides to hide under it. It was just a little too like. And then you gotta get here and go under the car. But once she was finally there, and then like you see Krampus stomping around the car and everything, it's a little tense. And then it's like, oh, surely he knows she's there because she just kind of like ducked under a car. Like I was expecting him to like jump on the car and just crush her. But that kind of reveals a little bit of his personality because he leaves this like little Jack in the Box thing behind that just like terrorizes her. And I thought she just died, but then like, you know, they go looking for her later and it turns out she was just being terrorized by him, I guess, for a while in the blizzard. But
yeah, that's very confusing on a timeline level, because watching it the second time round, because what happens is Beth goes out because she's like, I want to see my boyfriend, and it's just like, yeah, you know, it's just down the street, should be fine. Goes down, is missing, and so then Adam Scott and Howie decide to go out and look for her, and pretty much we had already shown well before she left that something happened, because Krampus drops that Jack in the Box, which I do have to mention one thing. This is one thing I get excited about. Again, I feel like this is one of the most well-teased monsters, because a lot of times when films try to tease something, it feels like a cop-out. Right. It feels like they blew balls, yeah. But I feel like you get to experience Krampus without actually getting to see the monster, because again, seeing the hooves step down and hearing the bells jingle, it is such well designed.
Oh yeah, and then later on when they're trying to like keep stuff out, you can hear him stomping on the roof and like all the noises that come with him and his little pals and stuff. Yeah,
because that's one of the things, surprisingly, because this is actually kind of related. Michael Dougherty, he didn't direct the first Godzilla film with Bryan Cranston, but that was one of my biggest issues with it, was they were teasing the reveal of Godzilla, like, oh, don't worry, he's gonna be here, get ready for this Godzilla action, and then they just blue ball you. They close the door, cut away, they do something, and it's like, the film is called Godzilla!
Show me the Godzilla!
Yeah, so I feel like being able to tease it while also not feeling like you don't get to see Krampus, because they could have easily made it just so not interesting, and then once you get to, because that's the thing, once Krampus reveals himself later, you're almost to the end of the movie there, which again, I feel like it's well done, because again, the teasing's well, like I love, that's the thing about his design, the silhouette of him is just so iconic, because you see this big lurched over figure with these horns there, and again, whenever you hear him running, as stupid and cheesy as it is, it's a cool shot, seeing the girl run and then just Krampus in the background, and you see him jump and land on the roofs. Stupid, but cool, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like Sonic the Hedgehog. Stupid, but cool. No, but it makes sense because he has this big furry coat on or whatever with the hood up, because it's a fucking blizzard outside, so of course he does. But so it doesn't feel like he's just hiding himself. I feel like a lot of times when monsters have big cloaks on or whatever, it's like, you being a pussy, show me the monster. But like this time it makes sense, you know.
And I love how ancient he feels there, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I love, it's just, You know, I love Sam a lot, but there's a lot I do love about Krampus himself, and watching it a second time round, it just made it, again, super enjoyable now that I knew kind of where the weak points were.
Yeah.
And so I do love that he drops the jack-in-the-box and that you don't see what happens. All you know is you see like this little thing go, and I noticed you were laughing during that point. I was curious as to what caused the laughter, if it was good, like,
Because I thought she died, and I was like, that's the kill scene? Like, that's... You just see a little, like, and then just scream, and then she's dead. I was like, that's the first kill of the movie. I was like, this is going downhill. I wanted to see Krampus cut somebody in half or some shit.
Yeah, because that's the interesting thing, is Krampus himself doesn't really do a lot of the killing there, which I have to say, I really like that aspect a lot, because especially with the films that are coming out now, it's like, what if Winnie the Pooh was a slasher? What if the Grinch was a slasher? And it's just like them just doing gory stuff that, you know, again, this film is PG-13 and it feels like a PG-13 horror film there. But I do love the way he goes about, you know, eliminating his prey there.
I can get behind that. It's a little odd. Because the lore of Krampus is that Krampus himself beats children, you know what I mean? So, like, in this version of Krampus, it's just like he has little toys and elves and spirits and things that torment or kill them.
Which is definitely not part of the mythos, but there is other stuff of, like, you know, he'll either beat you with a switch or he'll take you in a sack and, again, take you to hell, basically.
Right.
Which is why, again, a lot of people have the context of, oh, he's the devil. It's like, no, he's just punishing.
But I would have loved to see that. I never saw Krampus stuff a kid in a bag and just run off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you only get to see sort of some things like that, but it's never to that extent. And again, you don't really get that reveal till the very end of the film. Which again, if you're going to do it, that's the time to do it, I suppose. Yeah. But going back to the timeline of whenever Beth is attacked by that jack-in-a-box underneath the car, and again, you see, like, Adam Scott and Howie running out, and they hear that scream. It seems like the scene with Beth took place whenever she's running, and I guess Adam Scott and Howie are out, but the timeline doesn't make sense. It's either that, or, again, they're purposely making that sound to drag them away there, because that's one of the goofy established things that's established is the jack-in-a-box swallowed Beth and is able to mimic its voice, kind of, just saying, because and that's one of the interesting things, but confusing things, I will say.
Is it the jack-in-the-box that's burrowed under the snow? Is that what that is?
I don't know, because they don't ever really show what's there, so I'm assuming it's something different, because it's very slow moving.
I thought it was different, but yeah.
They specifically never show what's in the snow, which, again, it's cool, because I mean, I say it's cool. I think it's also kind of a cop-out. You never see what it is there. It's just basically like that Bugs Bunny kind of mound going through the snow. But it does lead to cool snow effects again, like seeing like how we get like bit and dragged. That's like, I mean, clearly they had a lot of fun with that effect, given a lot of the cast is taken out that way. They're just like... And again, it's well done effect, but...
I thought it was kind of dumb that by the end of the movie, they're like, we still have all these people left. I guess they're just all going to stand in the snow and get eaten.
Yeah, that was pretty lame.
5 people.
I agree with that. It's definitely a lame way to go out. It's just effective, like...
Especially because...
Oh no, we only have 10 minutes left in the film!
Kill these people really quick!
Yeah.
And especially because they're all running, like, and this is skipping ahead, I know a little bit, but they're all running to the snowplow, and like... You know, Adam's like, just stay there. You'll keep running to the plow. I'll fend him off, and he just shoots a bunch in the snow, and then he gets eaten. Like they gave him a stupid hero's death, and he didn't even fucking do anything because then it just goes and kills the other.
I agree. That was stupid, lame, and forced.
Yeah, and then it kills the aunt, and just like they elongate her death, and it's like whatever. You're pretending to writhe around in the snow. Cool. And then they do the same thing with the mom, but like the mom, that one was like. Jesus, people get mad about the Titanic door. Why don't you get mad about that? You could just hop onto the snowplow. She just stood there for like a minute and was like, kids, I'm going to stand here and look sad and cry. Go on without me. There's no room for me to just walk up the little step here. And then she just sucked in, and it was just like, come on, guys. Come on.
I agree with that. The only key thing is that as soon as Allison's character is sucked into the snow and she like gets the daughter into the vehicle, there's like a sound of like the chomp there. But again, it is kind of silly, like how she isn't immediately dragged away, that it gives enough scream time to be like, I love you.
And then she just slurped into the ground. I just feel like they made all of the kills from the monster that you can't even see. It's just a little burrow in the snow. I really liked it the first time you saw it, when they were out there, when they were hunting for Beth or whatever. I really liked it then, and then they just kept bringing it back, and I was like, that's not as interesting as the other monsters.
I agree. I agree. I think like it's one of those tricks that's like, wow, works well the first time, and then you keep seeing that same trick later on, and you're like, okay, I feel like, what do we do?
Right.
So I definitely agree that at the very least show what the monster is, but...
And there were more interesting monsters that they brought back, and I enjoyed seeing them every time. Like the elves, even though they didn't add in the elves until the end of the movie, and I thought their introduction was really corny, because the German grandma was like, yes! And then they break through the window. That was so fucking stupid. But the elves themselves were cool. They were like little demon, like... And they weren't like actually trying to kill anybody. They're just like tormenting little Krampus demon things. And that was cool. I like that. You could add conflict in with the story with them, because they caused trouble and they extinguished the fire and everything, but they're not actually going to kill you. That's for Krampus.
Yeah. And can I mention something interesting? The first time I watched this film, I hated the elves. I just like, this is stupid. But because I was prepared for the stupidity, because again, whenever there's hints of them at the beginning, because one of the things you see is they build a lot of snowmen.
Yeah.
Which I thought the snowmen were going to lead up to something, but nope, it's just a scare tactic there, which again, I don't know how to feel.
Yeah.
There. Like whether I would have liked for the snowmen to come alive. They could have been like another threat, but again, I feel like there's a lot of creative stuff you could do again with killer snowmen.
I also feel like that concept could have just been executed better, because like as soon as the storm hits, he looks outside and he's like, there's a snowman, and it's just obviously like a snowman. They might as well just wrote like, I'm gonna kill and rape your whole family on the snowman. And so it's like obviously a menacing thing that's staring into their windows, and the whole family comes over, they're just like, oh, neat. Fuck you, Max.
Yeah, it's so out of left field. Like, they said, I didn't build that, and then they just move on to another subject.
You wouldn't be, like, a little worried that there's, like, a snowman, like, 3 feet from your
door?
That's
very like, weirdly built.
Yeah, it's like, it has, like, tatters of clothes on it. Like, it's, like, it's obviously a menacing thing, but they're just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But
I feel like if that popped up, like, you know, after Beth had been missing for an hour or something, and they like go to open the door and there's just a snowman there or something, then it would have been creepy. And then like they start realizing they're in trouble whenever there's like another one right next to the window or something, and then he starts popping up. It's like one of those things that if they just executed it could have been scary, but it was just fucking goofy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And to hit to the point about the elves, like whenever they moved back and forth, this second time around I was like, man, I forgot about these. But surprisingly, once it's revealed, because, you know, again, Grandmama's like, elves, and they pop through the window there, I do like it because, again, it feels like they're hearkening back to the pagan kind of ritualistic ways of Krampus, which I think is a nifty idea, because, again, they're like dressed up as these scary monsters. And I don't know if you know about this, there's a lot of festivals celebrating Krampus where people dress up as Krampus and, you know, they'll like,
the scare children and stuff.
Yeah, but they don't actually like hurt them. So I felt like, you know, that was kind of like an acknowledgement or nod to that. And so for them being henchmen as elves, the first time I was like, this is a stupid cop-out. Second time I'm like, you know what, I'm actually okay with this. Especially with how cartoony a lot of the other monsters are. Because I will say, the Jack in a Box I felt like was pretty silly, but also pretty terrifying. But that's here's the interesting thing that I just started thinking about, because they have that whole scene whenever someone knocks at the door whenever the blizzard first starts, which again, thinking about it, like after Max tears up the letter and it flies up to the moon and it causes the blizzard, definitely cheesy how quickly that happens. But it's a cool power effect, just like, oh, whenever Krampus comes, there's like a heavy winter that blows in. It like basically locks them down.
Right.
But the DHL driver coming in, dropping off the package there, and then Allison Tolman's character being like, did you bring that as well? And it's just like, no, it's been here and stuff. And they're like, okay, I guess this is just another package to bring in. They bring it in, and as it's revealed later, whenever the tree's on fire and they take some of the presents upstairs to rewrap them, that some of the presents are Krampus's, which is perfectly fine. The only thing I have a question with is, how in the world did the Jack-in-a-Box get from outside to the house unless it's an entirely different Jack-in-a-Box? But if that's the same point, because whenever the two sisters go upstairs, they hear Beth's voice there, just like a distorted Beth's voice there, even though we clearly know that's not Beth. Did the Jack-in-a-Box somehow get into the magical sack magically there? I'm just wondering.
I don't know. That's just one of many plot holes. That's why I came to I was like, well, is that the thing that's burrowing under the snow? Because that would make sense that it would eat Beth and then get under the snow and do the little mimic thing so that they ran outside and then attack Howard, you know what I mean? And then maybe go out to the house and get up in the basement. And it does kind of escape by the end because it gets wrapped up in the chains and Howard jumps onto it because they needed to kill Howard somehow, I guess. So they pull that out into the snow and then he's back in the snow. So like maybe he is the snow worm.
It's just...
But I don't know.
It's just very unclear on what's what. But I will say it was unnerving first time round watching that Jack-in-a-Box, you know, because the big reveal, because you know something happened upstairs because you hear commotion and everything. And so the parents are like, okay, we're going to go investigate that. And then Howie's like hanging out in the kitchen, which we'll talk about later. But then you get to the reveal, like they're looking around, they're like, do we see anything or whatever? And then they have like the Jack-in-a-Box, you see the box, and it just leads to this huge, massive, and again, it's all practical effects, so that is major applause from me. And just this Jack-in-a-Box eating one of the sisters there, and you see the legs and the boots go through. And again, it is a little unnerving seeing that like almost predator-like face just eating it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Then you see the rest of the monsters, which don't feel like they should be toys Krampus has. They look like two Tim Burton, Jonan Vasquez style, in my humble opinion, because you get that teddy bear that again just has like all the teeth and the big eyes and everything. It just doesn't, it feels out of place. I feel like there's a lot of creatures, like again, elves fit in, Jack-in-a-Box fairly fits in because it looks like one of those more archaic toys. Teddy bear looks way too modern to be a monster there. I don't know what the hell that angel thing was at. That was just weird. And then you have like this robotic killer monkey there. It feels out of place. I feel like they're just designed to like, that's cool, let's just throw it in.
They seem fairly like not uninspired, you know what I mean?
Yes.
They're kind of derivative.
Derivative is the perfect word. Like you've seen these designs before and for me, it doesn't mesh well with the Krampus aesthetic they're trying to establish. And again, it's again like it's like doing the Evil Dead, where it's just both kind of absurdist with how it is, because even whenever the angel starts attacking Toni Collette's character, you see like this like little serpent tongue going like it just like, I don't know, I just didn't buy it, and it just kind of took me out of it.
I 100% agree.
There.
I feel like where like Evil Dead succeeds, even it's the first Evil Dead, not even necessarily the second one, but where it's like the evil spirits or whatever were like obviously mischievous, but they were also like dangerous, and you know, so like it was scary, but you get that they're like laughing and torturing you at the same time. I didn't feel like these guys were like torturing them. That's why I kind of like the elves, because they were actually kind of torturing them. The rest were just like, I'm trying to eat you really slowly, and like I'm trying to, like, I have an angel that's trying to stab you in the face, but I'm really bad at it because you're just screaming for an hour here. It's just like whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's just
and like the gingerbread men are the worst for me, because they're gingerbread men, and they're like, You know, I actually liked the nail gun part because
that was pretty good.
Because they were using the environment. They were like they found this nail gun and they're shooting it, and he uses like the kitchen stove board or whatever to deflect the nails. I liked that, and then it just got real corny when they're like, all right, well now they're gonna try to stand, and then every time like the even on the hook where it grabs Howie Jr. or whatever, just all the times that he's using these gingerbread man was just more goofy than anything else to me, and like not in a great way. It was like the Shrek gingerbread man. Like...
Yes, it was very cartoony.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, like that's one of those things that like in concept would be, I could see why you'd be like, this would be kind of like silly and fun, and you know, but then in the movie it's just like just kind of groan worthy.
Oh, you know, you pretty much hit it right on the head there, because even though I don't mind it, it's like, yeah, I can't refute that. Even I love how stupid it is whenever they get rid of Howie Jr. there. Because, again, the fire's out there, and that just invites the creatures to kind of sneak in. And, you know, they drop the chain there, and then they have the gingerbread there, and they're just like, oh, yeah, this fat kid's going to smell the gingerbread. That's
why I'm saying he's literally Augustus Gloop. He's just like, I eat. That's my fucking personality. and I ate a monster, and it dragged me up to die.
I will say the gingerbread looked delicious. Like, whenever you bit into it, it's like the soft, crunchy.
It did look really good.
But it was just so absurd with the CG, like wrapping the chain around so quickly, giving the whistle, and just...
Yeah, and especially like... At this
he even
point,
gets sucked up a pipe.
Yeah.
Except it's a chimney.
It's literally, it's just, at this point in the movie, the whole family knows that they're under attack, too. And so for this kid to be that fucking stupid, to just like wake up and be like, oh, there's a metal chain with a hook on it. He's literally Patrick Star when he sees the hook, and he's just like, I'm gonna put this in my mouth. Like, it's like how cartoonish this movie is.
Oh my god. And that's also followed with like something that you did, like the annoyed laugh, I think, whenever it's again like, you know, we need to take shifts, like watching it, and how he's like, yeah, let me take the first shift here, you know, Shepherd's gotta watch his flock,
and then it falls asleep. It's like the most obvious gag you could write.
But yeah, so that's definitely goofy there. I like the idea of what they were going for, but watching it a second time round, whenever I was expecting like, oh yeah, this is the part where this happens, I was a little underwhelmed by, and it's the fact that whenever, you know, Allison Tolman sees like her daughter still alive and there's a chance to save her, she just goes like full mama rage there, and so she's like, you know, fuck this, going through, and you know, she's able to take things out. And whenever she screams at like the Jack in the Box, I do like this delivery. Again, major applause to Allison Tolman for delivering the line where she's struggling to even say a curse word because it's not in her nature, but she just feels it right then and there to try to take it out. I felt like idea wise it's good, and I feel like again Allison's giving it its all, but it's something in the editing or like script writing there where it felt like like it just felt like they were trying to go for this big moment, but it just comes up a little bit short. And again, I don't feel like it's the actress's fault. Right. It's just both editing and writing wise.
Well, like that's one of those moments, and there are so many of these moments in the film where the main characters hesitate to just so that the bad guys can win. Like there's no other reason. And she like has to stand there and deliver a line just so that she can go miss her axe swing, you know what I mean? And that happens so many times where they see a monster and, you know, fucking Adam Scott points a gun at it, and then it has to just, like, look at it for a second. And it's like, oh, wow, that's really scary, and it's fucking eating one of my children. I guess I should shoot it. Oh, but then another monster attacks me. You know, it's like he has, like, 10 seconds to shoot this monster. And it's not just because he's a pussy or something, because he shot the monster earlier in the film with no hesitation. But the same thing happens with Howard when he's like, oh, gingerbread man, whoa, I gotta wait for them to attack me so we can have this goofy scene before I shoot them. And it's like you can only have so many of those before I'm like, how fucking stupid are these people? Where they're like, we have guns with bullets that defeat these things, and I'm gonna point it at it, but I'm not gonna pull the trigger yet for some reason. Like,
Yeah. Oh, God. That just reminds me of the earlier scene whenever he gets like the pistol and he's like, man, this thing is heavy. And it's like, yeah, it's Linda's.
yeah.
Again, as little developed as Howie's character is, I feel like the actor David just has fun with it.
Right.
He's just being himself.
And I liked Howie as soon as they got in the Hummer. That's when I started to like Howie, and then I started to hate him again when they got back to the house.
Yeah, he has that moment there, and it's really dumb and silly. Oh, speaking of dumb and silly, how about that scene whenever Max just says, "Yeah, go get him, boy," in the dog vent, and the dog goes through the vent to fight this huge giant jacket of Vox. Who will win?
Vertically somehow. I don't know how the dog got up in the vent and then it crashed through the ceiling. Magically, I'm sure.
Rosie the bulldog is magic.
Yeah.
It's just it's definitely kind of goofy and poorly delivered. Yeah, but yeah. Speaking of the dog, how they defeat the gingerbread, I feel like is a little bit of a cop out. Because I don't know how you felt. Again, I thought the nail gun was fun. And I thought whenever he hits the lantern and the gingerbread are just screaming for a long freaking time, longer than what I thought it was going to be, them just going, ah, ah, and the other gingerbread's like trying to pat the other one out.
That was funny.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Yeah, but the way it's defeated is a little cheesy again, because it cuts away to where he's like, oh no, I'm going to get stabbed by a candy cane, whoa! And then like, you hear like a... And then it's like the dog eating it. It's like, oh yeah, good girl, you know.
And they didn't even bother to like do some effect where the gingerbread man is actually getting eating. They just show
it's just a cutaway.
It's just cutting to a dog chewing like a separate dog treat.
Like,
and it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
You didn't want to show him like tearing up a gingerbread man. That would have been funny.
That would have been funny, and I wish they would have done it as opposed to just the dog just finished eating.
What would have been extra funny is if you like ripped it in half and like all this icing's coming out of him or something. It's
yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah,
I felt like these goofy little characters, like, you know, like milk it, you know. They don't.
And I think because they focused on, it's like one of those things where if they had just shown it for a second, them being on fire, it wouldn't have been as funny. But they focus on such a long time, and you just see him go.
Yeah. That one, like, where they're, like, in distress or fighting is funny. Or, like, where they're shooting the nail gun. And
they're just, like, slapping it with their little...
That's funny. Every other part where the gingerbread men are a part of it, including the weird claymation part or whatever, that weirdly animated part, it was all just too goofy for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Speaking of animated, one thing that I do like about this film, again... Not sure about the execution leading up to it whenever the grandma finally reveals who's been causing all of this, and that it's Krampus. I do like how they tell the story in a stop motion sort of style, and I do like the idea of the backstory that kind of leads up to it, and again, kind of gives you a hint of the morals of Krampus there, and the fact that, again... Her whole thing is the fact that she tried to get bread for her family, and of course it's like an impoverished time, and again the parents send the girl out because again the girl's more likely to get food than other people, but other people take it, and then the parents are just clearly hateful and upset. Too much to a stereotypical thing, but that's beside the point, just trying to tell a story. But I do like how it looks almost stop motion-esque.
Yeah.
And whenever it shows the reveal of Krampus, you just see a silhouette in the hallway. You never see like an animated thing. And again, you just see like the glowing eyes and give a wink. Yeah, which I like the wink. It's silly, but I like it. And then you just see like that destroyed chimney thing. And then it's like, it leaves a bell as a reminder to basically stay in the spirit of Christmas. I like that because it establishes his morals early. So you know going into it that, you know, he's not just some mindless monster. He operates on his own rules there, which I like. And
I like that. I did like the stop motion too. But I think I kind of liked it in a vacuum. I don't know that I like it, like... in this movie, you know what I mean? Like, if she was reading a story or something and it was like, oh, now it's a cartoon because it's like, we're talking about fantasy now. But she was talking about, like, this really traumatic experience that happened to her, and they were just like, cartoon time. It did feel a little weird to me, but I liked the cartoon itself.
Yeah, but you wish it would have been a better transition.
Yeah, like maybe if in the beginning she was like reading a story or something.
Or she pulls out a book about Krampus.
Yeah, or like
there.
something where it would like, now you understand why they're changing to a different medium. I felt, but like without that, it did just feel like, I want to do stop motion animation. Put it in there.
That's fair. That's definitely a fair point. I can't argue with there. It could have been a better transition, but if you're going to have it, I'm glad they did it that way.
It was cool.
It was just a rough transition trying to get there, and I think that's the film's biggest struggle. It has good ideas, just one hell of a time trying to execute it.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was pretty good, and trying to make sure there's other points I hit on. One thing I do want to mention, I do like how you get like whenever Howie and Adam Scott go to the house, you see the fireplace there and how it looks.
Yeah,
I think that's a good reveal of like,
tease.
you know, like how Krampus enters through the house, again enters through the chimney there. Which I also do like that they chose that, because again, the idea of like Krampus is like for the especially bad people, he drags them to hell. Fireplace, you know, fiery sort of entrance exit there.
Right.
I think like thematically it's well chosen, well done, but I like that reveal early because again, it's a good tease. Michael's good at teasing the monster throughout the entire thing, even whenever Krampus isn't there. So I thought that was well done. To whenever finally, like after the elves break in and basically hold everybody hostage, and you get the big reveal, because again you hear that. I will say though, that part of the scene was pretty comedic. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot, but the ant, whenever the monsters aren't actually dead and they're terrorizing people, like Jack in the Box, teddy bear, little angel creep there, and then the ant gets a shotgun and she's just absolute headshotting everybody. I feel like it's stupid and cheesy, but I like it. I like, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be her. Yeah, just
I kind of hated that, but I'm glad you.
Yeah, I understand. Trust me, this is not a what you doing, what Aaron. I just think it's so stupid and wonderful.
Yeah.
I just find it wonderful there with how stupid it is. Just her, and then she easily gets taken out, and she's like, "See you in hell."
Yeah.
So silly.
So dumb.
I did like how one of the elves took the baby and is just going,
Yeah.
doing that. And then Howie's like, wait, I gotta get out of this film too.
Yeah.
Throws on the jackbox, gets dragged out. Like, everybody is throwing themselves to die at this point.
Right.
This is the point of, like, we have too many characters. We gotta start, like...
And I just hate how it felt like they had to fit in every line in the script. Like, they just didn't cut anything. Because, like, when the baby gets stolen, it's like... There's all this build up to like the baby getting stolen, but nobody's paying attention to the baby, because I guess the moral of these families is they don't actually like
care
about their children. But it's not until the baby gets taken after like 10 shots of it wandering around that the mom's like, wait, where's whatever the baby's name is? And then they see the elf and she's like, no, she tries to break out, and it's just like, too late now. And then it's just, they just drop it at that point. He's like, is that designed to make me feel sympathetic for this baby that, like, I don't even like babies, come on, like they had no point to this movie except for that they left it in the car at the beginning, like.
Oh my god, I forgot. Where's the baby? Oh my god.
Oh yeah, it's like,
we left the baby in the frozen cold.
Right. It's like, that's the character I'm supposed to feel bad about? No, just cut that line, man.
Oh my gosh.
It would be funnier if he just took the baby and they were like, ah, well.
Yeah, and that just... this, again, I've mentioned this several times already, but this next point just follows more of an example of good bullet point, terrible way to get there. Is the fact that whenever the family's like, okay, clearly we've been invaded, we have to go out and find safety. Again... I know I'm assuming out of all the lines of the film, the one you cringed at the most, the one you're like, is the one whenever Adam Scott's going over. I'm gonna get close. The going over the plans there, and then he says, "A shepherd's got to protect his flock."
It's like it's like this guy watched him. Whoever wrote this fucking script, like, watched just every dumb movie made, and then like had an AI write the script. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, there's supposed to be a line that they say early that's funny, and then it becomes the serious catchphrase of the movie. And it's like, it wasn't, there's nothing about that was, that you should have told a rational person to leave that in that film. That fucking stupid ass line. It wasn't even funny. It's not even like so absurd that it's funny. It's not even like so bad that it's funny. It's just bad. I'm like, shut the fuck up, Adam Scott. He didn't even. You can tell he didn't even want to say it. Like his character didn't want to say it. He and his actor didn't want to say it. He was thinking about his paycheck and going home while he was delivering that line. You could see that in his eyes. He was like a shepherd. You know, he's kind of like looking up around kicking his feet on the floor. Shepherd's gotta protect his flock. Okay, I said the line. Can I go? Come on.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, I'm crying. Yeah. And so it just leads to a moment whenever they're like, okay, we gotta go, you know, to this mall, and if that doesn't work, to the police station, go to that snowplow. That's the whole goal in mind. They're all heading out, and they're like, come on, Grandma, and the grandma's like, no, I'm not going. It's like, come on, Grandma, let's go. And it's like, okay. And then they get to the door, and you could tell, especially the second time around watching it, you know the grandma's just gonna stay behind.
Yeah, she's like,
she just stay, and then she does the be good. She doesn't even say it in German. She just chooses selectively, which I do love. That Anne's like, I knew she knew English. But that's beside the point. And again, I know why they did it, because they wanted that cool dramatic reveal of Krampus going down the chimney, which I'm happy we got. It's a cool visualization of it. It's just dumb how they got to that point there.
I agree. Yeah.
That they were like, wouldn't it be cool if the girl who survived the first encounter with Krampus encountered her again all these decades later? It's a cool idea.
I like that as an idea. Yeah. It's just, again, the
just poor. And again, they even talk about it where it's like, you know, she locks the door and they go, no, and they're all slapping, open the door.
Right.
You know, and she just does that dramatic reveal, like, you know, like the I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Sort of like walk towards the fireplace, and then Adam Scott just goes, the window! And then Max is like, no! She's buying us time!
It's, and that part I hate the most, because it's almost like they discovered this plot hole out of the, 15 in this movie, and they're like, well, we have to cover this up with exposition, and so, he's like, oh, well, if the window's open, then they could go through the window, so wouldn't Adam's character want to do that? And it's like, but Max would stop him, because Max gets it, and Max could have told him that, when the grandma could have just said this, but, they just had to make the grandma the kind to just not talk ever, except for in German, to piss everybody off for some reason.
Yeah, that's
they could have actually shown her be traumatized. I mean, I think they're trying to do that with her just standing and staring, and they kind of have one line that they throw out that's like, isn't Grandma acting weird? And they're like, she always acts weird around Christmas. I can't figure out why while we're being attacked by Christmas monsters. I wonder if she has some deep trauma related to this, you know? And then she tells the story, and they kind of think everybody just kind of brushes her off. It's like they could have done a better job of her showing her trauma. It doesn't help that her trauma was depicted by a cartoon, you know. And then her facing Krampus could have been a cool moment, but I don't know.
Yeah, which we'll talk about. I mean, as I imagine you agree, the entrance of Krampus is cool, coming down a chimney, and then you hear the music playing.
I do like the whole thing. Once we get past the silly door scene and she's actually facing Krampus, I like all that. And he's finds it interesting that she's not resisting, and then he opens his little bag. And everything up until that point was cool. And then I don't know what the fuck was in that.
Dude,
bag.
I hate that scene.
So
I love that scene. It just has a terrible ending.
Yeah.
Way to it. Because again, the way Krampus approaches some of his prey is interesting. Because he's not just some vicious monster again. Kind of going and going. He's slapping people with a branch, grabbing people. They could have easily done that. He's a very methodical character, thinking things through. And so again, it is interesting because again, you see that big reveal. It's a cool ass reveal there, and he comes out. You finally get to see him, and again, I just love how big his horns are. And again, just like he looks like a melted Santa, and he has the goat's eyes there. And again, just the noise he makes of just a raspy. It is such a cool idea, cool design that they kind of bind, both Santa and Krampus together fairly well. Because again, we've heard the idea about Santa delivering coal to people again, and that's more of the current culture idea of it, because you don't hear a lot of people nowadays be like, oh, Krampus will get you there. That was like something that was phased out a lot later. But again, they combine the two ideas because again, you have Santa who delivers toys and presents to those that are good, and then you have the counter opposite, the one that punishes those that have been bad. And so because here's the interesting thing, and I really want to dive into this, especially because you dig deep into it. So you get the reveal, and I do love that, you could tell in my eyes that Krampus remembers her specifically, and just does a moment of like, just, take in like the finger, like, yes, I remember you. And again, slowly grabs the bag and opens it. And again, she's there standing there taking it. And then you see like the stupid toys like pop up and go like, and it cuts to black and it shows the rest of the crew running. So here's my thing. Krampus is established as basically like those that lose Christmas in their heart are the ones that get punished and everything else. And he's just answering to the wishes of those that just lost the Christmas spirit due to others. Because again, the grandma lost the spirit of Christmas, burning like her little Santa plush. She loved it because basically her parents made it an awful time and everything. And Krampus comes through, kills her parents, drags them to hell, all that stuff. And then Max, again, that's the whole reason everybody's so apathetic and awful to him at the beginning, is they're trying to push him to that edge. So that way, the Christmas letter where he's like saying, I wish mom and dad would love each other. I wish my aunt and uncle were nicer to each other there. And I'm sorry for my cousins who dad probably wishes they were boys. I wish my sister would play with me like we did whenever you were younger. And he like tears it up. Like his Christmas spirit and hope has been lost and everything. It gets thrown through the window, does like that there. So that's the idea. Whoever broke Christmas for them is punished. But watching it the first time round, I was horribly confused as to why the grandma was being punished there, whenever she was the one that's like, I'm warning you, like, don't do this, keep the fire burning and everything. My only, this is me like having to dig deep, burrow down for an answer there, is the fact that I'm curious if the grandma lost hope seeing how commercialized Christmas was being surrounding others, and everything else, and seeing the family just like fall apart around her again, if she finally lost that hope of Christmas there. Because I never got the feeling that she did lose hope, because she was the only one that was just like, no, you got to keep the fire warm, be good, Max, and everything. So I'm curious as to why she's punished per se. Because again, that's like the initial idea. He doesn't punish like the child whose spirit has been broken. He just has as a reminder of like, keep your Christmas spirit up.
Okay, I get you. I always thought he responds directly to a wish, you know what I mean? And so in the grandma story, she wishes specifically that her parents would go away. And so like Krampus goes and takes them all away. And so I feel like, I guess my impression was, for whatever reason, they didn't ham fist this part in the movie, but that whenever Max tears it up, because he has that hope, and his dad comes in and gives him the talk, and he's like, there's still time to send that letter, and he's like, he's gonna send that letter, and then that's like the last moment where he's just like, no, like hope is gone, and he tears it all up. And I feel like while he's doing that, he's wishing, like, I wish they would just all go away, you know what I mean? Because that's what he yelled at the dinner table or whatever. He's like, I wish you all would just leave or whatever. And so I wonder if the grandma was just like unfortunately included in that. He was just like, all my family, I wish they would just go away.
That's actually a good point, because again, he does wish for that at the table, but at the moment where he rips up the letter and stuff, he doesn't say anything. So
But I wonder if he like wishes that in his head and they just didn't like say it out loud for whatever reason. But...
Yeah, no, it was definitely an interesting way of going about it. So I'm glad you're able to break that down, and maybe that's what it is for like Krampus. Like Krampus is like, I remember you were keeping hope alive,
Right.
but this child's hope has been broken and wishes for all you to go away. So I'm obliging because, again, I do like, as stupid as it is that the cousins are suddenly interested in, like, you know, Krampus, like, you know, how do we be good? And here's the other thing. Again, we have all this development for Max, and he's dropped down through the majority of the film, focusing on the rest of the family, which is perfectly fine. I think that's a great idea.
Sure.
But then, why don't you have him ask the questions about Krampus? He's the one that loves Christmas and obsessed with Christmas there. Why doesn't he ask the questions? The cousins just all of a sudden, like, caring, which, again, I know the brother's gone, so I'm sure, like, oh yeah, more curious and stuff. This could have been more time, like, again, you have to pick your battles on who you want to characterize.
Right.
And I felt like them characterizing the cousins, you know, suddenly being interested, felt uncharacteristic and out of left field and weak.
Yeah.
So they could have strengthened the bond so that way, whenever the grandma does separate, because you get that small development at the beginning with Max and Grandma, but aside from that,
nothing. I agree. Not only would it make that stronger, it would also make the ending stronger, because suddenly Max has, like, some level of agency with Krampus when he realizes that he's the one that made the wish that made all these people go away, and that he's not being attacked by Krampus and the minions, and he goes up to Krampus and like begs him not to let them go and then to take him instead or whatever, you know what I mean? That moment could have had any level of build up to it if we focused on Max at all, and if he was asking Grandma like blah blah, and then if he was asking those questions, and then maybe if he just asked one question like, you know, can, you know, hypothetically speaking, if I made a wish that would all go away, could I undo that wish somehow? You know, if there was something to that effect or whatever, then like, you know, maybe if he thought he had some agency, even if he didn't at all, but if he thought maybe he could stop this, and, you know, because you kind of know that the snowplow plan is doomed or whatever, or the plan to go find Beth in the snow is doomed, you know. So if he thought, and therefore the audience thought there might be some hope to stop this and there would be survivors at the end or whatever, then that might heighten some of the tension in the movie. But there's no tension, you're just like waiting for them all to die, you know.
No, and that's perfectly fair. And so I think with that context in mind, that does make me appreciate the scene a little bit more, even though the kill just sucks. Yeah. It sucks. It's such a weak thing. Again, you could have even done like a thing where, you know, again, you mentioned you wanted to see people snatched in the sack. Like, why wasn't there like a thing, you know, like, you know, she looks down and then suddenly like something off camera pulls her in.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would have been a lot more effective than stupid cheesy nutcrackers popping out.
Yeah, because, like, other people are getting attacked, but because they're resisting. Because she doesn't resist, I think it would have been, like, 20 times more creepy if they just cut to, like, a shot from the kitchen or something through the doorway, and you just see him, like, towering over her, and he just, like, picks her up in one hand and just, like, shoves her in the stack. That would have been so fucking terrifying.
Oh, my God, that would have been so cool!
Yeah.
Oh, Michael!
Right. How much cooler would that? Because she's like, because he has so much power that he doesn't need to just like chase people down. That's why all these minions. He's like, just bring them to me.
And again, she's clearly not resisting. Right. She's accepted her fate that she will be taken.
Right.
Oh my.
And it could have been a perfect parallel to that little flashback thing that she had too, where she was looking at him through the doorway. You could have the camera in the doorway and him over her, just like scooping her into the sack. And just like harvesting her. That would have been terrifying. That would have made him so much creepier. But...
I'm having a reverse Frankenstein effect where my grade felt like it slowly was increasing. This one's slowly decreasing. Yeah. Oh, that would have been so cool. Oh, man. Oh.
Yeah, I feel like they really just needed to like bake this idea a little bit more. I had a couple more people in there be like, okay, well, what if we did this? Oh, that's a good idea. Or whatever. It's almost like they were just like, yeah, let's make a fucking movie and ship it to DVD real quick.
Yeah. I don't know. I might hit it down to a 5.5 just thinking about the potential of that. I mean, so barely 6. I will go there. It's hanging on by a thread. Yeah. Oh, that would have been so cool. Oh my, dude! As soon as you said it, I was like, oh, he's going to do it. Like Fogger's face. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And we're getting towards the end of the film, but one thing I do want to hit that I thought, again, was a nice small nice little garnish, a touch is at the beginning of the film whenever they're showing like the Christmas Carol where it shows Marley talking to Scrooge and being like, you will be visited by 3 ghosts to change your ways.
Mm-hmm.
I thought like I thought that was like a clever way of like throwing it in, just kind of foreshadowing what's to come.
I kind of liked that bit of foreshadowing. The parts where I hated the Christmas theme stuff was like, whenever Krampus is about to come down the chimney or whatever, and then some of the lights turn on and the radio turns, and it's like,
it's like, here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus.
Yeah, that one I was like, that's stupid. But...
Yeah, it's like, I guess I get it, but
right.
Come on.
Am I supposed to be scared? Am I supposed to be laughing? I'm doing neither of these right now.
Man, I'm like on an adrenaline rush because I'm imagining that scene you just played out. That's probably one of the best hypotheticals there. Anyways, let's talk about the bad stuff that happened.
We haven't been talking about that?
Yeah, we have. It's basically the part whenever they're all getting sucked down through the snow there. And again, one of the elves takes Max's cousin and is dragging it off. And I will say, I do like that she didn't also get sucked because, again, it just leads to a cool moment because, again, whenever Max is... That's the other thing I don't get. He hits the elf and it gets knocked and then it gets eaten by this creature, which, again, I thought maybe they'd all be on the same side, but I guess they're not.
Yeah, I guess not.
It's just like a hungry lion creature eating stuff, Sarlacc pit, whatever.
That's one question I do have after we get done talking about this, is just about the rules of this little world. But anyway,
yes, that's and trust me, I want to talk about that as well. Yeah. So Max, has his crowbar, he's getting ready, he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna free my cousin there, beat up Krampus and everything. And I do love that they have like again, pagan ritual like ceremony there, flames going, and I loved all of like the, again, no CG, they're just all like clothed like figures, like these weird horses there, the elves dancing around going and then Krampus lurched over there, and of course they always have the kid said a bad word, like whenever he's like, hey asshole, and Krampus like turns around there and he's like, let my cousin go, and so then they're just like looking and it's like and I am glad that he didn't just say that there and then they just laugh there. He's just like, I want my wish back. And he throws like the bell down that he's like given, just as, because Krampus, I'm trying to remember, this is bad, I just watched it there. Krampus gives him the bell.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and does. Then he just turns away and walks, and so then he's like there just kind of reeling it in, and that's whenever he decides, no, I'm going to get my cousin back.
Right. So
which again, I feel like is a well done scene. Again, it's just Krampus being like, yep, here's your wish. Don't forget not to be a dick during Christmas.
And they could have ended the movie there with Krampus just walking off and it would have been fine. But I almost like what they did better. Almost. I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. If they had executed it perfectly, right. It would have been amazing. But because there's definitely a lot of hiccups on the way there, it's harnessed. Because again, I do like the fact that, Max is initially going up being like, I'm going to beat you to get my cousin back. But then also just realizes, A, there's no way I can beat this thing.
Right.
And B, that's not how Krampus works. I'm going to try talking to him because clearly he's a creature of like thinking. It's not just a mindless beast going around killing people. Right. Again, has his own thoughts and beliefs, and he's like, I want my, I take back my wish, because that's the one thing that I think is cool, because it kind of solidifies to Max that it was his wish that he had, because the bell's wrapped in the letters there, the torn up letter, which again, I think is clever because it's kind of like, wish has been granted.
Right.
Here's your memento of the wish being delivered. And whenever he's like, all I wanted was a happy family there. I never wanted them to be like gone, even though in his heart, because that's a thing that the grandmama establishes early on. It's not what you do, it's what your heart believes in and at the moment. And again, thanks to you having that extra context filed in his heart, he's just like, I want my whole family to go away. I just hate Christmas now, because they don't ever support him. Mostly the only one that did it was Grandmama, but unfortunately, I guess she got lumped in.
Yeah.
And so tries to reason with Krampus. He's like, no, just take me instead, let my family live. I do like the aspect that, Krampus is clearly taking in this moment of like, wow.
He's like thinking about it.
Yeah, he's like thinking about it. He's like, I have this situation where this kid is regretting his choice and realizing the importance of Christmas and family. But then he also just kind of laughs at it because he's like, no, I'm still going to punish these people because they're awful people for the most part. Which again, it's very, I feel like I would get if they were completely apathetic, but there's moments, and again, they're actually good moments where, again, specifically the two sisters talking, Tony and Allison talking to each other about past Christmases, and you're like, oh, you had the angel? And it's like, yeah, you didn't know? No, not really. And they talk about past stuff, which again, you imagine a lot of families went through, and it's well acted between very good actresses there with a lot of emotion, which again, it's it's like a good nugget of a moment before it gets to the not so good nuggets of moments that's sprinkled throughout there. So I would pretty much agree with that. But because of that, I also feel like it's very manipulative there, because I feel like, again, it's like, oh yeah, they're human. They just it's like, again, they spend a lot of the film trying to earn our trust back with the main cast. Yeah. After being apathetic for the most part at the very beginning of the film. Right. And so whenever it's like talking about that, he's like, yeah, I want the family back. I do think it's a little cheesy, but I do like whenever they do laugh and they're like, huh, that's funny. And so then they're like, they open the big, pit to hell there. Yeah. Which I'm sure you were happy to see, like, okay, they're actually going to show them descending to hell. And again, they toss the cousin in. And I do love that, again, it just purely shows Krampus' strength that he picks him up and Max is like, whoa, whoa. And I think he says like something like, please, no, I'll do anything. I just want to have a good Christmas and everything. And then Krampus just drops him, and it's him like comedically, mind you, falling into the fire pit, slow motion going. And then it cuts to white with him waking up in bed, which I'm sorry, I try not to listen in, but I can't help but be curious about what you have to say, and it just heightens my enjoyment more because I'm like, I can't wait to talk about this. Whenever you had the audible, oh,
I knew it because I felt it coming. I was like, is he just gonna wake up and this is all a bad dream? Because I was like, this is like not a great movie, but surely it's not that bad of a movie. But then they were doing it, and I was like, these sons of bitches. But then I kind of got it at the end, because I was suspicious, because I was like, okay, this whole thing is like really overly warm looking, like just cinematographically, and and it was like, oh, it's because he was actually in a snow globe with a bunch of other. That's what Krampus does, is he puts them all in snow globes to be there for all of eternity.
Yeah, and that's the thing I'm curious about, because I want to talk about, because again, I felt the same way. If this was all a dream and they just opened up with a bell and then they looked to the camera and the film ends, that would have sucked.
That would have been awful.
That would have been suckish. So I'm glad that whenever they have this warm Christmas moment again, like
he learned his lesson. Oh, I need to appreciate family after all. But then he's also trapped in the snow globe for all of eternity.
But yeah, because like I was like, hang in there, buddy. Hopefully this fake out will make you feel better there. Because again, if it had been a dream, it would have sucked. Right. I hate fake outs a lot. There's rarely times that it works out nicely there. But this fake out, I felt like worked pretty good. Because here's the thing, Krampus could genuinely tell that Max genuinely just honestly wanted to have a good Christmas. It's not the fact that he hated his family. He just hated how his family was around Christmas. Right. There, that they had lost a Christmas spirit, and his hate just got the best of his heart there, and he lost that spirit of Christmas there. And so that's kind of like the trade-off I feel like Krampus does, I imagine, is like, because that's the thing too, it makes it confusing, because whenever they are enjoying their Christmas and then Max opens the present and the bell's there, and then he looks up and then the family members are like realizing, oh wait, that did happen. I imagine they all probably thought it was a dream. and he woke up.
I guess they kind of leave that open because I don't know if they're just like, what is that bell? Who's it from? Or Max is the only one that knows, or if they all know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I assume from what
Max
I'm able
seems to remember, he's the one that was like had a bad dream, and everyone else is like, "What's wrong, Max?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, my belief is that they all went through the same thing simultaneously there, that they all woke up, that it was a bad dream, and they're probably thinking, oh, it was just a bad dream. There, you know, they go through and everything, and then once they realize it, and then it zooms out, and it shows them in the snow globe, and then it shows other snow globes in this Krampus hideout. It makes me, it confused me the first time I watched it, because I'm like, so is this what happens to all of Krampus's victims? He doesn't actually drag them to hell, but my thing is this is one I'm picking up second time round, is Krampus's actions is like, you know, okay, I'll give you guys a good Christmas, but in return, I own you for eternity, because you're still bad people, and you have to also suffer for the consequences of being hateful.
Right. So what I kind of got out of that is that's his thing, right? He does that to every family, is what I thought, right? Like, so even whenever, like, the grandmama in her story wished that her parents would go away, he probably went and snatched those two people in a snow globe and left the wisher, the grandmama, behind. So I feel like that's normally what happens. And then in this tale, Max comes up and he's like, that's what he was going to do to all the rest of his family except for Max. But then Max was like, take me, right? All I wanted was to have a good Christmas. I take my wish back. I just wanted to have a good Christmas time. Take me instead. And that's why Krampus kind of thinks and then laughs and goes, haha, okay, I will take you, and you will have a good Christmas in the snow globe with the rest of your family.
See, this is why I'm happy we talked about this film, so that way we can lock it down, because I think that's what I interpret as well. It's not the fact he captures everybody in the snow globe. It's just, this is probably not his first time round doing it. He's probably used to it, doing this for like hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's probably been a lot of kids who do regret immediately, like, yo, please don't take my family away. And so then he's like, okay, yeah. You know, I'm going to own you, and you're going to have your perfect Christmas, but you're going to be trapped in eternity.
But you're only going to have perfect Christmas for all of eternity.
Yes, exactly. And then you can't resume your normal life. You're just trapped in a snow globe in one of my collectibles. And again, it's a cool idea, especially if you get it the second time round with all that message and stuff in. But they have to end it in the cheapest, worst way possible, which is not very good CGI creatures coming to attack the screen. Yeah. Like, I think a much more effective way, and again, this isn't as clever as your idea, like, nothing will top that. I'm just, like, doing that is either, like, have, like, hear, like, a raspy laugh from Krampus and it cuts to black, or you hear, like, his laugh and then, like, him walk in front of the screen and you hear, like, the ruffle of the cloak and it just cuts to black. Don't put poorly CGI monsters that go and attack the screen.
Cartoon.
It's just a stupid way to end the film. That's the one thing I would say out of the entire thing that I'm like, I hate that. I hate that.
It is big dumb.
But I will say I did like during the credits, I did like how there's a lot of like family photos of like Christmas stuff there. I thought that was a nice nifty touch there, that they did that a lot. But it did lead to a very hysterical comment from you, Aaron. It says like, it's cool. It's like, hey, you could put your photos in this credits here. Is it a good movie? No. And I was like, oh boy.
Because we were talking about like who these people were, because I was like, at first I was like, okay, these are like the movie stars, but as their kids' photos with Santa or whatever. But I was like, I don't recognize, are these even them? And then there's so many that this must be like production or just like people in the studio, or like whose family photos are these? And yeah, so that was the conversation I imagine happened as some studio executive be like, hey, we're making a Christmas movie. It's like a Christmas horror. We're going to put family photos in the credits. You want to submit one? I pick, oh, yeah, no, we took a Christmas card this year. Is it going to be a good movie? Oh, no. But you can add it in anyway.
Yeah. Oh, man. No, I can't argue with that. That's a good solid point there. I did actually think of this. I actually thought of this just now, but you talked about how this film is very similar to Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
they even have the advent calendar to show the passage of time and what day it is.
Yeah, they did do that in Christmas Vacation.
Yes, which again, I don't feel like that's only Christmas Vacation could do that. I feel like, again, it's like they do use it for 3 days,
Right.
and I feel like it's fine.
But I feel like they're trying to. They even talk about squirrels in the attic or whatever. There's so many Christmas Vacation sort of references. It's like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a parody. Like they're trying to parody that. Like part of the time me watching it, I felt like this was trying to parody Christmas movies, and that's
I can
why
see
they were
that.
so over the top and stuff. But like,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't ever come through
Yeah.
strong enough for me to think that 100%. But
That's fair. That's fair. Now I am curious about this.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to see a sequel of this?
I mean, I would watch one. I would watch whatever for this podcast. I'll watch bad movies, good movies, whatever. But
Would
I
you
mean-
have hope for a sequel?
if it was like a direct sequel, like this is the same Krampus, same universe, same director kind of thing, I wouldn't have high hopes for it. No. No, if it was someone else's interpretation of Krampus, sure, or if it was, you know, I don't. But I mean, yeah, I would
Yeah.
watch. I would watch another one. I just wouldn't
Have the highest hopes.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect much from it.
That's fair. That's fair. For me, I would love for Michael to revisit this idea, because again, I think the ideas and concepts he have are cool. It's just
Yeah.
other stuff that needs to be more well tuned and well toned. And again, it might be one of those things like, you know, be careful what you wish for. But yeah, aside from that, anything else you want to touch on upon Krampus?
Yeah, actually, a couple things real
Okay.
quick. I know we're kind of running along.
No, that's
but
perfectly fine. I'm enjoying our conversation.
while we just mentioned the point about Max's whole little journey there, I did just want to mention, I think it would have, if we were fixing this movie, if we were doctoring up this movie, I think it would have actually worked better if Max had seen that he had made a mistake earlier. If he had like made this wish that he wished all his family would go away because he was actually just upset and emotional about something stupid, you know, like he fucked up his, like nobody came to his school play because they were late in traffic or whatever. There's supposed to be Christmas and the family's dumb and they said one little mean thing to me and I just wish they'd all go away. And then whenever like the blizzard hits and stuff starts getting real, and then because then instead of the family being so just giant dicks to him, like actually, and he just wished that they would all go away. And then he was like, well, I didn't really mean that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now they're all dying, and then it was actually focusing on him. I wonder if that would be a better plot device, if he was like, oh, fuck, and he had, like, guilt, and he was like, oh, shit, I did wrong, and, like, they're now I'm the wrongdoer, instead of, like, yeah, I don't care that all these people are dying, because they're horrible people, you know what I mean?
So what I'm getting
Yeah.
is they should have borrowed less from Christmas Vacation and borrowed more from Home Alone.
Yeah!
Because that's him. As soon as he started talking about them, I'm like, yeah, like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. I think definitely that would have fleshed out his character a lot more. Because again, you don't see any development from Max in the middle of the film. You
Right.
see it at the
All in the
beginning,
beginning,
and
then-
all at the end.
And then they just drop, which just makes it weird because like he seems like the main character, and then you don't see him like at all in the middle of the film.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that sentiment there. There's definitely, they could have chosen to like as bad as it sounds, give up on these other characters
Mm-hmm.
and just make some good solid characters there. Like, because otherwise you're just trying to win all the battles there, which I think was just a poor choice. So I think definitely if we had more, because that's the thing, the one thing, as much as I've been positive and kind of raving about the film in comparison to you, aside from Alison Tolman, have I really mentioned any other characters like, oh, that's awesome? It's just like, that's kind of clever, or that's just,
I love when that one kid said a line. Just kidding, he didn't. He was the fat kid.
Yeah, drank the Mountain Dew and burped.
Yeah, haha, very goofy.
So I would definitely agree. What are there other bullet points?
The one last thing I wanted to talk about was the universe of this film, what the rules were. Because I just felt like there was absolutely nobody there, and there was just all chaos, and they tried to fluff it away with a little line of like, well, our one neighbor is in Florida, and the other neighbor is in a different warm place, and the neighbors across the street, after Max did the noodle thing, well, they don't, we can't talk to them or whatever. But every time they're in the streets, there's like no sign, besides the DHL guy that comes in right at the beginning, there's no sign once the blizzard starts that there's any other life besides them. Like, even whenever they go over to the boyfriend's house and it's been kicked in and stuff, you don't see any like dead bodies or anything, or like loot. It's like just like what happened to everybody. Like, you see their houses have been broken into, but like, and you see like the snowplow has been left, but you don't see anybody else, any little extras or anything besides. So my question about this whole world is like, is this actually happening, or are like they in the snow globe the whole time? Like, what's like, like what is going on here?
Yeah, that's a great question. From what I'm able to understand, it's just this big snowstorm, because in the radio you only hear a small tidbit of like, all of Ohio is covered in a snowstorm. Weird. It's Ohio. Monsters.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing it's everybody there, and it just hits that whole one area there.
What happens once this thing wraps up? It's just this whole fucking neighborhood dead? Like, is that... And then they're not, nobody's talking about that. Like, I don't...
Yeah, it definitely jumps into like a lot of like, but wait, focusing on stuff like, does Krampus be selective on who he hunts down there? Because again, it's hard to punish a lot of people in one night.
Right. Do they all just forget? Well, yeah, because like, so if this is actually happening and it's affecting an entire neighborhood, like, does nobody know about these giant, massive massacres that happen often enough for him to fill up his shed full of snow globes of modern homes? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question. I mean, I guess if he drags them to hell and stuff and just uses the creatures to capture them, then I guess they just disappear.
Right, but the people that survive, and then the snowstorm passes, and then they drive through this neighborhood, and they're like, wow, every single house was ransacked, and all the people are missing. What's up with that? You know, like,
what's up with that?
What's up with that?
You ever wonder about Krampus? He just goes in.
You ever wonder why every year at Christmas some town on the map gets hit with a blizzard and everybody dies? Weird.
That's Ohio.
That's just Ohio, baby. Remind me never to go to Ohio.
God, I want a Jerry Seinfeld bit about Krampus.
What's the deal with Krampus?
Yeah, that's a good solid point. I think it's just one of those things that it's like, and I think the only thing you could say is like, yeah, that's definitely an oversight for sure. It's like, if you think about it,
it's one of those things that's like not the most important thing in the world, but I just find myself focusing on these stupid little details, and I'm like, what?
Well, and I think that's the thing about the film, because again, this is my thing, because I'm not one of those like, it's a movie, Aaron, anything could happen. Like, I think that's a dumb freaking like excuse. Like, it's just a movie. I think, in all honesty, because there's films I've seen where it has loose plot threads and like, well, what about this? Yeah. What about that? Like, but if the film is entertaining enough to make you not care about it, it's done a good job. Like, you think about like Gremlins, you know, don't feed them after midnight. Well, what's technically after midnight? You know, what's the time frame there? But again, the film's so fun that you just don't really focus on that. But again, if you're not enjoying the film, that just little nitty gritty thing becomes just another thing to add to the pile there. So I totally understand exactly where you're coming from. I'm just fortunate that I'm just able to be like, yeah, it's just kind of there, which again, you know, if he has the ability to put people in a snow globe there, that would have been an interesting aspect there, but I think it would give away the grand reveal. That's a like, huge twist at the end.
With every other kind of like monster movie, quote unquote, like the greater world is either doesn't know about the monsters for something, like Evil Dead. You only know about it because they're in the cabin or whatever, and they have the book or whatever. It's very explainable why, because they're in an isolated territory. We're not in an isolated territory here, and in other movies like in Halloween or something where there's not an isolated territory that's getting attacked, like, okay, well, now people talk about Jason, or they talk about Michael, and they know it, and then there's like a lore there and who he is and why he returns. There's always an explanation for either, you know, people know about it because it's a populated area, or it's isolated, so only the people that are isolated there know about it. And this one doesn't answer either of those questions. Like, were they actually isolated? The answer seems like no, because the DHL person comes, the plow comes in, so like they're not the only ones in the storm, but they don't interact with any other people in the movie at all, and they wander the streets all the time. They don't find anybody at all. Like, so it doesn't answer that question. So like, okay, it doesn't seem like they're isolated, but then the outside world doesn't seem to know about this at all. You know what I mean? It's like every other movie I can think of answers that question, and this one doesn't.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point there, and I never realized that they don't interact with a lot of people there, and they have that throwaway line at the beginning of like, oh yeah, you know, they either don't want to talk to us or they're not here.
Yeah.
I think it would have been, I definitely think if they could have trimmed the fat in some areas and really heightened other aspects, like, you know, again, like maybe they're not able to like leave.
Yeah.
You know, there's like, you know, something like, you know, if they walk outside, like they're trapped in like this sort of like inescapable realm there to where like it forces them to be in the house.
Either that or even something so much more explainable. Like, what if their yard has like a little bit of snow on it, and then everyone else's yard just has snow piled up against the walls or something, and you're just like, oh shit, what's going on here or something, and there's like a physical barrier that keeps them locked in or something.
Yeah, maybe. And so I think that's just kind of the issue, because there are some cool moments they do exploring neighborhood going through there again, because we get that pagan sort of like ritual at the end of the film. And again, the first initial time you see like, you know, it go through the snow, whatever it is, you know, mound, and then them exploring the house and seeing like the fireplace torn up, stuff like that.
Like that part of the world's cool.
Yeah. But
what if, I mean, here's even just one little scene they could have tossed in to explain it all. What if they're in the Hummer and they driving and they keep driving straight, and then they like loop around and they pass their house again or whatever, and they're like, wait, yeah, you know, that would just be like a little mystical thing where it's like, okay, they're trapped in this little realm or whatever.
Or like if certain houses were trapped there, because it showed clearly that the boyfriend's house had been ravaged, and there was a fight because you see his gingerbread stabbed with a kitchen knife there. That would have been like cool, and it's like, wait, where's this person's house? It was here. So I think they could have done that for sure. But yeah, definitely missed opportunity. I will say that's not quite as big of a strike down as the better way they could have off the grandma there, but that's still a much better idea, and it could have trimmed a lot of the not so good stuff that came with it, because there's like a lot of cheesy scenes, like again, like whenever Adam Scott picks up the photo, looks at his daughter there, and like, yeah, don't worry, we'll find her. So
it's
I think you hit a solid point there, and I think that would have been a much better way and would have cut out the unnecessary ugly fat.
And doesn't have to. That was just something I'm riffing off the top of my head. Well, but I think there needs to be. And I know this sounds like such a minor, stupid little point. But the whole point of genre really is world building, versus like literature is more about, you know, character and development or whatever. Whenever you're talking about genre, like when you talk about Star Wars, you're talking about, oh, the lightsaber, the Force, you could do this, you do that. You know, when you're talking about, you know, even romance movies or genre, you're talking about, okay, the love, the connection, the whatever. Like in science fiction, it's like, okay, the alien, the whatever. In fantasy, it's like, okay, what are the rules of this universe? Okay, some people can use magic, some people can't. You know, like those is what forms the world, and then you understand the story in it. And there's nothing that really forms this world for me. But
yeah.
Anyway, even like Freddy Krueger, you're like, okay, like Nightmare on Elm Street, I understand. He can hop through dreams, he can come out of them. Cool. That's the concept that we're working in, and now I can enjoy the story. I just don't even really understand the concept of like where this world is.
Yeah. I think that's a solid point there that I didn't think about. And again, it's kind of like one of those things like, yeah, I can't refute that. That just makes way too much sense. And
again, it's dumb. It's not something I was thinking about with the whole movie. But it's,
and even
like
then, you've never come across this idea, and you came up with that solution instead. So I feel like, again, the fact that you're able to come up with something, I still think speaks a lot of loud words there. And I think like, even though like it could have even been less effective there, but it's better to have a more concise, less effective idea than just a bigger chunk that's like, there's a couple of good nuggets there, but the rest is just porridge,
even
like just goulash.
I understood the rules of Trick or Treat, you know what I mean? I understood they showed you kind of what happened. They showed you with Sam, and kind of you understand the rules of how Sam operates. And in each of the little vignettes, you kind of understand, even they give you like 4 different complete storylines, and you get from start to finish how that little world works. You know what I mean? You know, the yeah, I guess I can't spoil all those things, but you get it. They give you a fully encapsulated, these are the rules, but they didn't do that here. And they had a whole movie to do it.
I mean, that's too, again, too solid of a point to refute with. And I think overall my rating is a very soft 6 during Christmas, 5.5 any other time of the year.
Fair enough.
I think if you have Nog and Friends, it's a very
Nog and
comfortable.
Friends?
Yes, Nog and Friends, it's a solid. It's a mushy 6.
A mushy.
Otherwise, it would probably move down to a 5.5 if I was watching this in like March or something. But if you're just in a Christmas spirit, yeah. I think it just heightens the enjoyment and experience of it all.
Yeah.
It's like with Trick or Treat. You can probably watch it any time of year.
But it's so much better in Halloween.
Yes, exactly. And again, it's the same film. You would still enjoy it any time of the year. It's just Halloween just makes it even a much more perfect time. Yeah. So I think that totally hits it. And in all honesty, this is kind of like a surprising take. Not that I'm trying to purposely look for bad films.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of glad that you didn't like this film. I feel like we had a lot of interesting stuff to hit on, just different aspect-wise, because I felt like, the last few films, it's like we've been on the same note, so it's been a while since we've had...
There's a little bit of disagreement.
Yeah, disagreement there, but it's like one of those things that I'm like, no, I totally agree with your points there. You bring to light stuff that, you didn't like, that I'm like, man, you're right. And then I brought up some stuff where you're like, okay, yes.
I totally get where you're coming from with a lot of stuff. It's just like, that's not where I landed, but now that you're talking about it, I totally get that.
Yeah, but I think we've gotten to the end of the podcast, unless you had any other stuff. I think you brought up a lot of bullet points. I mean, in all honesty, I thought The Thing was going to be a longer episode than this one, but it turned out being the opposite there, so I found that pretty interesting. But yeah, hopefully that gives you guys an idea on whether you'll like Krampus or not, if you're still listening there, or if you've seen Krampus once before. Again, if you're looking for something to watch during Christmas time, could do in Aaron's case, probably couldn't do much worse than Krampus, but worse. if you're going to watch it, Nog and Friends. That's our solid recommendation. Good with Nog and Friends. So that comes to the end of our episode here, and we're going, as a special gift to you all that we always give at the end of every episode, we're going to talk about teasers for the next episode here. So hopefully this is throwing out the good hints there. So
2023?
Yes. So the new episode for 2023 is actually going to tie into slightly the idea of New Year's, and the fact that, New Year's, you always strive to be a better person.
New year, new me.
Yes, exactly. New Year's resolution there. It's a new year. You wait for the clock to hit a certain time. And this film we're watching is going to be a sequel. So is there a sequel that we have reviewed on this podcast that focuses solely on trying to be a better person than what you are, and there's a timer?
Saw?
Yes, we're going to be watching Saw 2. So, so I'm sure you'll be very curious to see where to go from here on that, from the first one there. So, with all that said and done, thank you so much for listening to this episode, guys. We hope you all have a Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or if you don't celebrate, hopefully you just have a good time.
Yeah.
And we'll see you all again next time when we're Poppin the Scary with Saw 2.
Saw 2, baby.
Saw 2.
I saw it 2 times.
We'll have to see what happens there.
Saw it. I've never seen it.
Okay. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're Poppin the Scary.